star so bright. Pull your hat down, make sure your cinch is tight. Horses kinda snuffy, cold chill up your spine. You'll get your ass moving, son, with burning daylight.
Howdy there, I'm Matt McKinley and we're burning daylight.
In the saddle till the job's done right.
Welcome to Burnin Daylight, the only podcast for the working cowboy. Well, welcome back, Daylight Burners. Hope y'all have had a good first month of the Trump presidency. We're now into March of 2025, and the world's still spinning. Sun's still shining most days. It's still winter, even though I thought that we're just going to be permanent summer by now with all the climate change, but hasn't happened yet. I feel like this is one of the things I love about Donald Trump, and I was talking with somebody the other day, is like, do I think the guy's corrupt? Well, the guy is a New York City real estate magnate. Of course I think he's corrupt. I think he's openly corrupt. And that's what I like about him, is you don't have to guess where he stands. Like, he just tells you. He tells you why he's doing something. And then he still comes out ahead in the negotiations. Like, he telegraphs his moves and still makes it happen. I don't know. The guy's a fucking force of nature. Is he corrupt? Yes, but I don't think he's any more or less corrupt than any other American politician out there. He's a classic American politician, but he says the quiet shit out loud. And like we were talking before. By the way, Dan Gibbons back on the show. I forgot to introduce you before I get too on a tangent. Dan Gibbons, we guys remember him. He's got the bison out in West Virginia. Really, really interesting guy. My kids said to tell you hi, and you need to come visit again. So,
well, I'm sure if I come back, they'll have more roast for me to be done, because I think they said that when I was wearing glasses because I didn't have my contacts while I was there, that it looked like I was from California or something with glasses. They're making fun of me.
I know. I was like, tone it down, guys. He's my friend. Leave him alone.
And then what Sophia said, something like he got pissed off or something because I was gone when he came back home one day.
Yeah, I forget it. Yeah, he got pissed. He got pissed off and left.
He got offended, left.
Yeah, I got offended. Yeah, and then you were heading out into a snowstorm, and my daughter said, "If you don't come back, we'll tell your story."
We'll write your story.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, they were fun.
Yeah, so they said to tell you hi. We just finished up wrestling season yesterday. Gus was he needed to win his last match and then one more, and he had been in the third and fourth place match. So he did it all right. I think he won one, lost two. His one win was he dominated, and his other two matches were pretty close, and he did good. It was a good tournament, good season. So I was proud of the little shit. He's a tough little dude.
That's good to hear. I like both your kids a lot. They're good kids.
Good. But we're not here to talk about kids. We're here to talk about empire. And one of the things I feel like Trump is being more upfront about what American foreign policy is all about and what it always has been all about. But we have this we come from a hypocritical stance immediately when it comes to empire, because we broke away from the empire as a colony. And we set ourselves as the shining city on the hill, where freedom and liberty and everything. But we also conquered the rest of the continent and expanded to the Philippines.
We also bought some. We did some land deals.
We treated all of our conquered people pretty well, except for the natives. Like they fought us a lot harder than everybody else. But we didn't. Yeah,
they also, I don't really feel bad for it either because, gosh, when you read about some of the things they did and that was like what was acceptable, I'm like, yeah, they were pretty brutal people. They weren't exactly civilized, and everyone's like, oh, the Native Americans, we took all their land. It's like they were constantly fighting and genociding each other and eating each other on occasion. So I was like, I don't know. I mean, like, unfortunately, a lot of them were completely wiped out. But when you read about some of the stuff they're doing, as you know, you and I are obsessed with that. I'm like, they're pretty brutal.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to make a moral judgment now as compared to then, because if we weren't wiping them out, they were trying to wipe us out, and it was a war of conquest, and that's what mankind has always been. And we like to think that we're above that now, and it'd be nice if that was true, but we're not. And it's so. Looking at it from a real world perspective, Trump's talking about, annexing Canada, making it the 51st state. He's talking about buying Greenland from Denmark and taking back the Panama Canal. And while I'm a libertarian at heart, I don't think we should be meddling in overseas affairs. I can believe that still, and then also live in the real world that's exactly what we do. That's exactly what every other country with any sort of influence does to the level that they can all around the world. So it's the game that we're forced to play in. And as much as I hate that game, it goes back to Jesus said, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. And I take that to mean just like, that's the world you live in. Do good in the world that you live in. And so here we are. We have we have a guy who I would say has an imperialist streak to him. He's a real estate guy. What's he value more than anything? His real estate. Well, and his brand, but his brand is real estate. So, he's talking about we're just taking Gaza now. We're gonna take it. We're gonna own it. We're gonna make some. It's gonna be beautiful. It's gonna be beautiful. And you're like, I mean, I don't like the idea, but I don't know if there's a better one out there. There's a better option on the table,
Yeah, I mean, well, I mentioned there was a German girl, and I think she either dates or is married or something to like some Arabs in Germany. Mm-hmm. And so she's got a real soft spot for Palestine. And she just, where Trump treated that video of like the Palestinian Riviera, if you will, she's like, this is so horrible. I'm like, listen, Trump is more pro-Palestine than any other president we've had since maybe Clinton, and Clinton couldn't do anything because he was compromised. And the two-state solution, I think Trump is like, I think he threw it out there because he wants all the Arab nations to come together and chip in and create some sort of Dubai there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's just throwing stuff out there. So then the Arab nations finally speak and like, well, actually, we wouldn't like that, Trump. We will pitch in some money to rebuild it, because there's just, from my understanding, there's like nothing there.
Yeah, it seems like it's pretty well wiped out. It's funny. They talk about how bad Trump is for Palestine, but in the 30 days he's been in office, there has been a ceasefire that has been broken several times by the Israelis, but that's what the Israelis do and for that matter, that's what the Arabs do on those ceasefire deals. They break them all the time, but about 100 and change Palestinians have died under Donald Trump's watch, and probably bumping up on 100,000 on Joe Biden's watch.
Yeah.
So, who's been better?
It's the same thing with and that's what I pointed out to her. I was like, he's promoted a ceasefire, like, and even if he does want to build a Riviera there, like, then the Palestinians probably will eventually come back, and they'll come back to not a bombed out shithole.
Yeah.
So who cares? I mean, if you get some Saudi money in there, man, things will be looking good.
Well, if you extrapolate Donald Trump's first 30 or so days in office out for the full length of this Gaza conflict, or this Gaza extinction campaign is really what it is. And I'm not even like trying to play the pro-Palestine side. I'm not trying to play the anti-Israel side, but that's clearly what it is the Gaza extinction event. They're not, if they wanted to eradicate Hamas, they'd be far more surgical about it. They're just laying waste to the area. They're killing indiscriminately, and they're pushing them one way and then bombing them in the place they said is safe, and then they're pushing them the other way and then bombing them in that place, and it's like they're trying to piss them off and kill enough of them that they'll just voluntarily leave. But here's the thing, they don't have anywhere to go because Israel keeps them in. They got the Mediterranean Sea, and then Egypt, who also doesn't let them in.
And Egypt is concerned, I think, because if they feel if they take these Palestinians in, that their current regime might be overthrown because they're at risk.
Yeah, because they had just overthrown the popularly elected Muslim Brotherhood, who Hamas is an offshoot of and has deep ties to Palestine.
They don't want them polluting, swaying the opinion.
Well, and Jordan doesn't want them either because they're already about 50% Palestinian, and they're, it's a monarchy there. So
it's bad when your own people don't want you. I know there's Sunni and Shia and all that crap, and I don't really know, where I forget, are the Hamas, are they Sunni or Shia or what?
I'm not for sure, honestly.
Or are they just like the redheaded stepchild that nobody wants?
I know they're like an offshoot of Muslim Brotherhood, which I thought was Sunni.
Okay.
But they're funded by Iran, who is Shia. I don't know.
Nobody wants them is the thing.
Nobody. I know. Well, in like Jordan, they assassinated King Abdullah's, dad, the former King Abdullah of Jordan, like, was assassinated by the Palestinians. So that's why they got kicked out of, or they don't want any more of them.
If you're like me, I just can't stand Israel. I can't stand Netanyahu. I think he's just an arrogant, leader who's totally corrupt and bloodthirsty and unreasonable. And then I also look at, what's gone on in the Muslim Brotherhood, and I don't have any love lost for them either. I really just don't like either one.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I'm the same. Like, I got no issue with the Jewish religion, but I don't got any particular love for it because I'm a Christian. So I
separate the Jewish religion from Israel.
I do
and
too.
And I think there's a lot of Israelis that would like to see Netanyahu go.
Oh, I think so too. And but the people that he has to cozy up to stay in power are like religious zealots. I mean, truly religious zealots. But just like hardcore Judaism.
Ben Shapiro's that aren't even in Israel,
Oh, but like even more hardcore than Ben Shapiro. I mean, they're they're talking about taking over the Sinai Peninsula and Syria and Jordan. I mean, all of it. Like their map of Greater Egypt is a lot bigger than what Egypt is now.
Yeah. So once they do that, that'll be the end of them. That'll spell the end for sure.
Yeah, they don't have enough. There are not enough Jews in existence to do that because the Israelis have a really, really capable military when we send them the weapons. So they're they're getting a little big for their britches. Honestly, that's kind of what I feel. Especially after, well, then speaking of which, the Zelensky thing that has set the world on fire. The meeting in the Oval Office where J.D. Vance first and then Donald Trump just dressed down Vladimir Zelensky, because at the end of the day, you're a beggar coming over to beg for the existence of your country, existence of your power, and you're trying to lecture the president of the United States in his office in front of the world and expect to get away with it.
I think the craziest thing about that, though, is Matt, is first of all, he went out and campaigned for Kamala Harris, or is Biden, and then Kamala
on American
Harris.
soil.
On American soil. And like, you even have to look back farther at who he really is. I mean, he was part of that Servant of the People show, and then he was the candidate of the party Servant of the People, which was funded by the same guy, this guy Kolomensky, I think his name was, who lives in Geneva, Switzerland currently, but was kind of Ukrainian and had Privat Bank in Ukraine and was laundering money. And he also had One-to-One Media, which owned Servant of the People. And then he started Servant of the People Party, gave, and obviously they attended each other's birthday parties, Zelensky and Kolomensky. And Kolomensky, they also believe, at least Russia's reporting, that he was one of the main majority shareholders in Burisma, who was paying Hunter Biden, who actually wanted, who had his own army and like just did whatever he wanted in Ukraine. And actually there's video footage of him. He invaded this one business that he felt was his and was like there with his private troops. And there's footage of him coming out. So this Kolomensky guy probably is the guy who killed that Gonzalo Lira American reporter,
the American journalist. Which
and so
doesn't get much, airplay on American media for some reason.
So when you think about that, though, that's why Zelensky could come over to the United States and with all these Democrats, because it was just a money laundering scheme, I think, through Sam Bankman-Friedman.
What was his
running money from Ukraine through Sam Bankman-Friedman back to the Democratic Party. And that's why he could come over to the United States and just act like whatever. And that's why he campaigned so hard for Biden and Harris, because he had them. He had them on the hook money-wise.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's doing all that. And then, he apparently was screaming at Scott Bessent like a couple weeks ago, the Secretary of Treasury, Scott Bessent, who seemingly, if you watch video footage of Scott Bessent, is a very like passive, kind individual. He kind of strikes you as. Nobody seems to really have a bone to pick with him. He's more of a professor type of guy. And so he's been doing all this. And then the strategy was, right, to first send in Macron and then Starmer. And they're all trying to weaken Trump to then finally send in Zelensky to get more weapons and like be the backstop, if you will, of Ukraine, which is just a way to lure us into like World War III and get into a hot war with Russia, which is insane. And Trump will never do, because he and Putin kind of have a little bit of romance. So I do kind of think that like JD Vance went a little bit hard at Zelensky, but I listened to the whole like hour. Zelensky kept trying to get the last word in on things throughout the whole interview. Like Trump would say, we need to, talk to Putin. He's reasonable. And Zelensky's like, he won't honor his agreement. He won't honor his agreement. And it's like, shut up, dude. Trump is trying to make a deal. And so he does that through the whole like 50 minutes.
Yeah.
And then JD is kind of like fed up with him, I think, and kind of goes a little bit hard at Zelensky. And then Zelensky goes over the top, and then it's over.
Yeah,
blows up from there.
I enjoyed JD's approach. I thought he could have been a little more pointed in his he came off as real elitist with have you said thank you once? Which I agree with the sentiment. I thought it could have been worded better. It'd be like You realize without us, your country ends, right?
Well, the problem is there's so much backstory and the disrespect that Zelensky gave on social media, and then also after meeting with Scott Bessent and Rubio, and then going out and kind of touting how he, showed them or whatever. There's obviously was a lot of bad blood in that room, and if you look at Marco Rubio, the whole time Marco Rubio was like,
he looked like he was just miserable.
He's just like, why am I here with Zelensky? This isn't going to work.
Mm-hmm.
And there's belief. So actually, the crazy thing is, it's coming out that allegedly Victoria Nuland wanted Zelensky to push back on Trump in the Oval Office to try to embarrass Trump in the administration and Marco Rubio and everybody. So there's like these, neocons that are also telling Zelensky to set this whole thing up to cause a scene, especially since Macron and Starmer couldn't get anywhere with Trump earlier in the week.
Yeah, it's. So at the end of the day, it all is just a bunch of douchebags playing backstabbing. That's all it is.
It's a bunch of I'm no offense to any Europeans, but the people. But when it comes to the European politicians and diplomats, they're the worst. They are the problem.
Yeah.
Right now. And I never thought I would say this. I thought, we've been brought up in PSYOP to think that the United States is the warmonger, but no, I think it's actually the Europeans.
Oh yeah. Well, look,
we've just been fighting their wars.
Just look back through history. Yeah, the last two world wars primarily happened in Europe. I mean, Asia got hit pretty hard. The second one
could have
been prevented.
The United States could have sat out on the wars too.
Right. And while we wiped out a good number of our men, like, we didn't put a real dent in our population by going to those wars. I mean, like, it was a significant number. Don't get me wrong, but in the grand scheme of things, compared to what Europe endured, like an entire generation twice wiped off the face of the earth from the European continent, and it's just the strongest and best of them.
And you know what's interesting, and I've been in Germany a lot, and I don't think my German friends might not like to hear this, but Germany is still an occupied country by the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And what you had in this last election was the AfD, who was on American podcast, who said, well, in order for Germany to get itself in order, it's going to have to stand up on its own and not be essentially just occupied a big military base by the United States. And I have a tendency to agree with that. Germany is going to have to stand up on its own, but they're so neutered, where they're just trying to always virtue signal on everything, whether it be their energy or taking in a bunch of illegals, refugees, whatever you want to call them, into their country, that now they're like this cucked country.
Germany is a Mercedes station wagon with all of the bumper stickers on them.
It really is.
With all of the bumper stickers.
And what was crazy was, just and I'm surprised the AfD didn't do better, but some say their elections were rigged over there. I don't know. And the CDU sold out the German people already. But, when I went there originally back in 2010, the Germans were like, we can take all these refugees from North Africa. It's going to be fine. And then I went back in 2015, and they had to shut the border down between Austria and Slovakia, because there were so many refugees coming in. They shut the border down, and I was like taking the train between the countries and saw this all happen. And, when you're at the train station, there's Germans with dogs and MP5s, which I was pretty jealous of, and it looked pretty sexy to me. But they shut the border down, and because they had all this influx of refugees. But of course, Merkel was like, yeah, bring them on. And then when I went back in 2019, some of my German friends finally confided, yeah, maybe it wasn't such a good idea. And then finally, when I was back again there in 2023, a few of them confided in me, like, it's a real problem. One had married an American girl, was like she was getting German lessons, and there were some Arabs in the classroom. Of course, the Arabs wouldn't, like, these people from North Africa wouldn't talk to her because she's a woman, and her friend could speak Arabic, and they were talking about raping her in their own language and stuff. So Germany has just, they're like the United States with illegals times 10.
They're but like France is the same way. The UK is the same way.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at like all these, like freaking Romania, they just arrested the front runner for the president. I guess he's out now, but it's exactly what they did with Trump at this election. So he could just be paraded through court after court while the election's going on.
It's totally screwed.
Over supposedly Russia hacked TikTok and swayed the Romanian election.
If that's the case, I mean, the argument there is so dumb because it's just, as we know, but it's like, okay, so and it's just like JD Vance pointed out, like, if some social media can influence the outcome of an election, then maybe you have a bigger problem on your hands.
Right.
Maybe you should be a little bit more entrenched with the people to where they win. But it's just the Europeans cannot, and I know that they say this about Americans and stuff, but I feel like at this point, there's quite a few Americans that are a little bit more enlightened about their own country than Europeans are realizing about theirs. They don't really understand just how sinister and controlled and brainwashed they are into believing a bunch of this stuff. Even my conservative friends, they still thought the CDU in Germany was going to save them. I was like, you need to be AFD for a shot to even start to improve.
Right. I mean, that's like the people thought that Nikki Haley was a good alternative as a Republican president. And you're like,
oh, Nikki Haley? Yeah. She's this exact same crap of the Democratic Party. I mean, she's Dan Crenshaw. It drives me crazy because there's still some boomers I talk to. They're like, Dan Crenshaw, patriot. I'm like, that dude is a joke. Like, if I ever meet him, I would laugh in his face. That guy is a sellout, rhino, needs to go, just the worst.
Yeah, he's a turd.
He's such a loser.
But so all of this is like the USAID stuff that's been shut down. If you look into USAID and the number of coups that they've fomented across the world, in the name of international development aid, it's supposedly an aid organization, but they helped overthrow so many governments across the world, and essentially doing that. They were the public facing front of the CIA for the most part, and so it was all empire building shit, but it was all like in the shadows stuff, like secret, covert. Everybody like was they're just wowed by the covert ops of World War II, that they're just like, oh, we got to do that for everything, man. And I like the in the open stuff, like the covert operation stuff is really cool. Some of that stuff is it's fascinating. The Israeli pager bombs was gangster as fuck. Like, that was the most gangster thing I've ever heard about. It was, I was like, that, I mean, you just like, tip of the cap to you. That was well done. That was fantastic. But if we're gonna be an empire, let's fucking be an empire. Let's go plant our flag somewhere. And there's a lot of shit I think we did way wrong. Because we had been kind of sniffing around empire until World War II. Like, we had had Puerto Rico and the Philippines and Hawaii, but that, like, we weren't really a colonial power. until World War II ended, and then we're like, when we rolled into into Germany and saw what a blood feud looked like we didn't really have the stomach for that shit. Which was what the German, the Holocaust was. That was that feud had been going on long before World War II. That the European Jews had been at war with pretty much all of Europe for centuries at that point.
Probably. I mean, a lot of people argue that even Waterloo had some tie-ins with it. So I don't really.
I don't know, but I mean, like, granted, Jews were on the losing end of that war for sure, for centuries. But they, like the German Holocaust deal was like, that was like pulling back the blanket on a mutilated corpse, and we're like, oh fuck, we don't want any part of that. And so we try to do like nice imperialism, and turns out that doesn't work nearly as effectively.
Yeah, it's overthrow these terrible regimes and nation build, and it's like, well, that's not really working out for us.
Well, but like, when we say nation build, then we just like turn it over to them, and we're like, yeah, have fun. We're like, well, that's not how you do that. If you're going to be an effective imperial power, like, now you're just forcing that country to hate you, because you're going to have to come in and crush an uprising and kill a bunch of innocents in the meantime. And well, now you just you stirred up a hornet's nest that's not going away anytime soon. And I don't know. So take Vietnam, for example. That was one of our many failed military blunders over the years. We could have been friends with Vietnam from the get-go, and all we would have had to tell we'd have had to tell France to fuck out of there, like, fuck off. You guys lost. Like, we came and saved you. No, we spent a lot of our blood and soil. You're moving out of Vietnam. Like, you're out of here. We're gonna roll with this Ho Chi Minh fella, and we could have had, like, Vietnam could have been, Hong Kong, but a full country.
Yeah, I mean, Vietnam was other than being a complete disaster. And once again, is it surprising? We would never been messing with Vietnam if it hadn't been for the French.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like the theme is always us coming to backstop the UK or the French or whatever,
mm-hmm.
for all their entanglements and their decolonization escapades throughout the globe. Vietnam, I just don't think, it's hard to say. I mean, he was Ho Chi Minh was probably he wasn't much of a guy, or the whatever. What was the military leader's name? I can't even think.
Yeah, I can't remember it either.
But I think, honestly, the communism would have ultimately failed anyhow, just like it did in the Soviet Union. Of course, we didn't know that. Hindsight's, a lot clearer, but I don't know what I'm still at a loss of, like, what were we really getting out of Vietnam?
See, that's if we would have kicked the French out and made, because, like, we were already working with Ho Chi Minh during World War II, in Indochina there. And if he only went communist after we let the French take back over. Like, that was when he went full communist. And, like, there was a solid chance that we could have had a Singapore type of situation but for the whole country of Vietnam. Had we not allowed the French back in.
Yeah, the French too. I don't think that after World War II they had much of a fighting, you look at all their colonies.
They didn't have much of a fighting flavor during World War II. They got steamrolled, and then there was pockets of French resistance that helped modestly in the Allied campaign, but I mean that was American military might, and the Brits can talk their game or whatever, but you almost got exterminated at Dunkirk, and then again off of Crete, wasn't it? Where they almost lost the entire British Expeditionary Force. I think it was Crete or somewhere off of Greece.
They have made a lot of blunders. I mean, they were getting destroyed in North Africa too by Rommel.
Yeah.
They had finally started to have some success. I mean, the Americans got whooped up on because that was the first really engagement they had with the Nazis.
Mm-hmm.
And the Italians, and they hadn't figured everything out until finally Patton came, and then I think he was able to be more aggressive and realize the tactics that they needed to take against the Panzers and everything. But of course, Rommel wasn't even actually commanding when Patton finally won some of the battles. I don't think Rommel was actually in Africa, right? He was up in Germany at that time.
I think so, because he'd kind of got recalled or something. I'd have to, excuse me, I'd have to look at that timeline again. But
anyhow, the Americans did have to learn. I think it was Rommel who said, I've never seen a fighting force commit more errors and mistakes than the Americans, but I've also never seen a fighting force learn from their errors and mistakes faster than the Americans.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of how the Russians do it too, except they don't ever take into the consideration like conserving troops, like where Americans do. Like
not at the top of their list.
No, but if you look at like all of their campaigns, it's like absolute blunder for like the first year and a half, maybe 2 years, and then it's just like, boom, we're setting up defensive lines, throwing meat at the wall until you crumble, and then digging another trench and moving forward.
Perfect example is Ukraine. I saw Eric Prince say of Blackwater, formerly Blackwater founder, whatever. He said that at the beginning of the Ukrainian war, in order for them to return fire, like artillery fire or
like
whatever
20 minutes.
Was like 30 minutes, right? Did you see this as well?
Yeah.
And he said now it's down to what, 30 seconds?
Something like that. It was like from anywhere from 30 seconds to a minute and a half. And they would have like accurate, concentrated artillery fire on your position.
So the Russian, I don't think Russia has really fought. They hadn't really fought a big, I wouldn't say a fairly large front or large scale war probably since Afghanistan. Is that fair to say?
Chechnya, but
Afghanistan,
Chechnya and Georgia, but those were pretty limited.
Rolled through there, right?
It was pretty brutal. But I don't think it was like massive amounts of troops like this is, though.
I feel like they've become hardened now and figured out their tactics and figured out their capabilities. And I think
they have a much more effective chain of leadership.
Seems to be, yeah.
Or at least maybe not the most wise of chain of leadership, because it is very autocratic. So you get a lot of yes men, but look at our military.
Oh my gosh.
I would say at the upper echelons. It's yes men for weapons manufacturers, though, instead of yes men for the autocrat leader of the country.
Calling the ranks of the U.S. military makes a lot of sense, because it's just, you looked at some of what these generals said and stuff. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Mm-hmm. You can't be serious.
Yeah, I'm intrigued to see how that's going to play out. I'm I'm intrigued to see how we're going to deploy it. See, so this is a series of episodes that I want to do and be kind of its own spin-off show, I think, is what we'll. But it's going to be called Burnin Daylight Conquers the World. And I want us to play Risk in real time. We have a president who is more outwardly imperialist than pretty much any in our lifetime. Like even George Bush was actively imperialist, but his rhetoric was never as such. His rhetoric was always, we're going to fight the terrorizers. We're gonna spread democracy and liberty. And I'm like, well, I don't. That doesn't work. That's never how it actually works. That's never a feasible attempt. No, we're gonna go get ours, but I think we should do it in a strategic. What benefits America proper? Well, what benefits the United States citizens? Like when we go conquer, are we gonna make? Does Canada deserve to be a full state? Do they deserve full statehood, or are they relegated to a Puerto Rico status, which I'm kind of more in favor of? Greenland, they don't got enough people to be a state, so they're going to have to be a territory. Panama, Panama is going to be a vassal state. I think I don't want them wading into our politics on a domestic level. But the Panama Canal's got to be ours. That's a vital trade outlet, trade route there, and we built the motherfuckers. So yeah, I got no problem with taking that back over.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you want to set the stage for what we're going to talk about, but you were saying, earlier before we started our hypothetical imperialistic aspirations of the United States, we kind of have to clean house.
I think first. So. I think we really got to clean house. We can't be a proper global empire if we can't take care of our own backyard. And I think the most sound foreign policy that the United States has ever had was the Monroe Doctrine, which essentially said, at the time, it said if you got colonies in the Western Hemisphere, you can keep them, but you're not gonna expand anymore, and if you try, we're gonna fuck you up. Stay out of the Western Hemisphere, it's ours. Well, now I don't care if you got colonies or vassal states in South America or Caribbean or wherever. Western Hemisphere is ours. We were reverting back to the Monroe Doctrine. Stay the fuck out of the Western Hemisphere. We'll trade with you, but you ain't doing any business in the Caribbean. You ain't doing any business in South America, Central America, and Mexico. No, fuck you. Get out. This is ours, and we have the power to project that. We have the power to kick you out. Don't make us do it.
No, I agree. I think that's the move. I mean, before the United States, hypothetically, starts to invade the world, like, we have to get back to some, I guess I'd say, like, just traditional American values, and also probably beef up our production and economy and our own resources, open them up. And I think that's what it's interesting because Trump is trying to do that right now, whether it be, opening up more timber or oil or gas or whatever you have, mining. He sees the United States as having, on our balance sheet, if you will, it's always been traditionally, the United States is completely broke. But in reality, we're not. We have a ton of resources that we haven't tapped into. And there's arguably, right, the United States has been doing this kind of secretly. It hasn't been said out loud, but it's been like, let's exhaust all these other countries' resources first, and then before we tap into ours. So let's not deplete our resources first. Let's deplete other countries. So let's take all the oil from the Saudis. let's take all the oil from Venezuela and all these other countries, and import it before we really try to ramp up our own production first. So some people say that is the strategy the United States has done. I don't know if that's really been like when the president comes in there like, hey, just FYI, I know we have these trade deficits, but it's okay because we're going to suck all the resources from other countries first before we tap into ours. FYI, wink, wink.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems kind of true because we do have, like, the U.S. government owns like the majority of the United States and the minerals and the resources, and we just haven't even opened them up.
I know it's pretty wild, and then this is where the environmentalist types, and I don't mean the crazy lefty militant environment, but like anybody that is any sort of conservation minded is like, all right, well, now how are we going to do that? We can't go strip mining, entire mountains, and
they do here, but
well, I know they've done it out here too, and you can see the results of it. It's not real.
It's pretty. Not pretty. It's not great. I'm not a fan, really.
Yeah. So like there is that conversation to be had. Be like, how do we do that? But the thing is, if it happens elsewhere, I'm not as worried about it.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of empire, right?
Yeah.
But
what if too, the whole environmentalism movement was actually just a psyop by the government to convince people to not tap into our own resources first and first take from others. And now it's like, oh, actually, just kidding. We don't actually care about environmentalism. But now we got to roll back that psyop, which might be a challenge because people are indoctrinated. But anyhow,
there's a lot of people that are really, really far into that. So,
but I always try to say I'm a conservationist.
I think so too.
I want clean rivers. I want clean streams. If we can mine, in a sense where, you can still swim in the rivers and there's still trout in the rivers and all that, and, do things in a way that there's still wildlife and your people aren't, like in West Virginia with the, when DuPont was there and they were, doing C12 or whatever, which is the Teflon, and women were having deformed babies. It was like, okay, not good. There's obviously a problem, and it was killing all this guy's cattle and everything.
Yeah.
That stuff you can't have. It's just terrible.
You can't do that.
But when it comes to, environmentalism in the traditional sense right now, that you hear people talk about, it's ludicrous. It's totally unrealistic.
Yeah.
You have to have the thing that pisses me off the most is literally, yesterday, there was a girl who messaged me who was like, Trump's, against the environment and he just wants the minerals of Ukraine. Okay, well, what minerals does Ukraine allegedly have? They have graphene or graphite, and they have, all the stuff to make batteries, which is electric cars, which is blessed by the environmentalists, which arguably the components that go into batteries, mining for that is just absolutely devastating to the environment and a lot of people, depending on what country you're in. So, fossil fuels is arguably more humane in many regards, or nuclear energy.
Does it make it better that it'll be white slaves pulling it out of the ground in Ukraine as opposed to black slaves?
I tell you what,
I think it makes it better.
When I look at the stuff that goes on in the the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and some of those cobalt mines, I'm like, that looks pretty much like how I would imagine slaves building the Egyptian pyramids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's what technology does not exist over there.
It does not. It is children carrying crap out. And I'm like, yeah, I don't, if that is exactly how it looks like, that's how I imagine people building the pyramids.
Right. So just like, can we do imperialism a little bit better than that? I think we can.
Probably.
I think we can. And that's the point of the show is, because, and it's not that I'm pro empire, but render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. And it appears to be that for the past 100 and change years, we have gone on this path of empire. Like we really hit our stride in 1945. But we've been the most skilled athlete. Like we've been blessed with LeBron James type of athletic ability, and we got really fucking lazy. It's like we're if LeBron James weighed 400 pounds and was still trying to play at a high level right now.
So do we want to, did you want to talk about what you were thinking in terms of getting the United States ready to go on our imperialistic ambitions?
Yeah. Let's talk that because I think our first official episode that I think me and you, and I'll see if Royce and Aaron want to join in and see maybe we can have like our reversion to the Monroe Doctrine. What specific steps we take there? I think that'll be the first official episode. But in the meantime, yeah, we've got to have a strong domestic front before we can project outward. Like we're we're like the guy holding up the ball but his knee is about to give out. Like we're holding it together, but it's not real pretty. It's a fracturing foundation at the moment, and so we gotta shore that up at home. Number one being domestic production. Like we've got to bring back manufacturing. We've got to figure out a way to make the agricultural system be more sustainable, be less reliant on subsidies. I'm not completely anti-subsidy, but I'm becoming more and more so all the time. Especially when I don't know, I'm like we have broken the American farmer over since like 1950 forward.
It doesn't seem to be working in a natural, organic way at all.
No.
And, I think between, it's exactly the problem with the pickup truck, which is, what is the cheapest F-150 you can buy? I don't know, $35,000 maybe?
Maybe, I don't know.
Maybe if you get it's probably not even four-wheel drive at 35,000. If you got a single cab or just long bed F-150, my guess, I haven't even looked it up because you probably couldn't even find one to buy because they probably aren't even producing those. But we've made everything so overly complicated and overly technological and overly luxurious, and we've gotten away from just focusing a lot on the end product, like with John Deere with the right to repair. And in Japan they make a $14,000 like little Ford Ranger pickup truck that would be adequate for the vast majority of people, and you could have sitting out back behind your house when you needed to do pickup truck duties. Otherwise you drive a sedan or something. And I'm not saying, and I'm the guilty of sin. I have a massive truck and I have 3 vehicles in my driveway that I probably don't need, but I have fun with them.
Yeah.
Now I have driven the heck out of all of them. They're like, most of them are like at 300,000 or over 250,000 miles. But when you look at regulations and things like that, it has created the end product of the truck, because the trucks got bigger and bigger and heavier to meet CAFE standards and other regulatory requirements within the government. And if we get rid of those, then we can finally get back to equipment that just works and is more simple. Like
on that same note, these emissions requirements on diesels has ruined the diesel motor. Like the diesel engine is one of the marvels of technology, of internal combustion technology. There's so much power in a diesel engine, and they're choking it down with all this emission stuff, and then you got to pour urea on their on the filter, and in the meanwhile you took something that used to get 20-25 mile a gallon on a big heavy pickup on the highway, now gets 11. So you're burning more diesel. The diesel that you're burning is less efficient because you literally wash it before it to get the sulfur out. And does it help with the emissions? Probably not enough to go. You're making everything more expensive.
Well, Matt,
and you're taking the reason people have a diesel in the first place is for the extra power and the increased fuel economy. That was the reason for it, and you're taking both of those elements out of what makes the diesel engine great.
Well, we have a case, IH, Farmall C90, which is like I think it's like 90 horsepower or whatever, supposed to be. Of course, if it's over 75 horsepower, it has to have emissions crap on it, which is the diesel particulate filter where you put the blue DEF in to reduce emission standards. So we didn't even have 500 hours on that tractor last season, and it would go into limp mode because of the emissions. It kept saying that there was a clog in the diesel particulate filter. So we had the dealership come out. They thought they fixed it, got it out of limp mode, went back into limp mode. This is like 3 days before we're needing to put it into full mode to cut hay. And it's the tractor that runs our mower and our baler, right? So we have other tractors but they don't have enough horsepower to run the baler. So what do? We buy this like OBD2 system that you can plug into the computer of the tractor, download the software. I email the software to some random dude in Austria. Okay, hypothetically, right? We didn't actually do this, maybe. The EPA is listening. We didn't do this. But he sends me the software reprogrammed by the morning. The next day, I go in there, plug it into the tractor. It deletes all that garbage environmental software, and our tractor picks up like 20 more horsepower and like 30 more torque, to where now when I'm going up certain hills, and even if I've got the bale almost ready to be ejected, I can pull that hill in like third gear mid. And it is unbelievable. Rolls a little coal from time to time, not a whole lot, but man, the tractor runs like a dream. And like, that's the kind of crap that is just killing people. So anyhow, and the thing is, they don't have as strict of standards on diesels in Europe as we do in America. So in order for them to be competitive, they have really pushed a lot of this environmentalism garbage in the United States to where we don't get access to some of the better or equipment that doesn't have this garbage on it, that makes us like less competitive here. So anyhow, sorry, ran over, but
well, I think you're 100% right.
Get rid of stupid regulation, basically.
100%,
because that's holding back production.
So my brother-in-law, he runs a pretty large silage outfit for in western Kansas, and they're like in bed. It's a corporate-owned farm, and they're in bed with the John Deere dealership, of course, who's in bed with the Ag Credit, and it's all talk about vertical integration there, like row crop and seed crop farming is 100% vertically integrated, with the American farmer itself just being essentially the hired hand in that whole process. It's funny is like, but so that being said, they have a fleet of tractors and pickups, and they get all the newest fanciest stuff from John Deere, and they always have white Chevy Silverado Duramax diesels as their fleet pickup, and as soon as they're off warranty, they pull the emissions and delete that stuff, and they pick up about 10 mile a gallon and 100 horsepower. just by pulling the emission stuff off. Then they put a chip in it and they gain another 5 mile a gallon and 100 horsepower or whatever.
Once you get rid of the emission stuff, it goes from maybe, if you're lucky, 175,000 mile vehicle to like a 400,000, 300,000 mile vehicle over its life. No problem.
Yeah, it's amazing. So like, and by doing all these emissions nonsense like that, it leaves so little room for creativity in the automotive market. Like if you look back at the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, all the way up to like the mid 70s, there was like it was engineering, but it was also art. The shit that they made. And then it was kind of like the 70s was like, that was when pickup technology like really shined. Like Ford, Chevy, and Dodge, but particularly GM and Ford had pickups that were tough, durable, they looked good, and they were easy to work on. You could like it was like the peak of like workable pickups. And I don't know, they made everything so easy to work on, and now like you can't work on anything. You can't fucking work on anything because it's all sensors and bullshit. And they're not even using the technology to benefit the the end user, which is like the chips that people would put in their diesel pickups, still do, I'm sure. But that was designed to make the pickup run how the end user the owner wanted it to run. And instead of like copying that model at the plant side of things, they took it and ran the other way. Like, how can we're gonna save the environment, but it's just like you took this badass muscle bodybuilder type of a vehicle and made him into a desk clerk.
Yeah, I think we agree, though. We got to deregulate this crap because, I mean, and it's for, like, it's sweeping. It's not just machinery and cars. It's the BS that you have to deal with. I mean, look, I used to be like, oh, you don't need that's doesn't exist. You do need regulations, but the stuff that's stifling production or new entrants or competition has got to go.
Yep. Yeah, the stuff that that's the thing is that people they use regulation as a cudgel. Like, well, you got to have regulation, but then they pass the regulation and the only people that can comply with these new regulations are the big polluters that are already in existence. So they spend a little bit of money,
or the companies that can absorb the administrative cost of meeting the regulatory requirements. That's why automotive companies, I think I saw where Ford makes most of their money from financing expensive vehicles. So it's not, they don't want to sell you a $20,000 vehicle that you can go pay in cash. They want you to finance it, and you pay. It's basically like you're always renting something. And so people don't want, like, it's truly, the model has become like what Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum said, you'll own nothing and be happy. Well, you won't. I'm not going to be happy, but you don't own anything because everything is made to finance they want you to finance everything and not own it, and be able to pay something in cash and straight out own it and work on it and fix it yourself. So
it's amazing how many people I've seen with like a brand new pickup. It's like, man, can't wait till the warranty's off of this motherfucker so I can actually do something with it. You're like,
really,
just like, man, our feed trucks are the same way. It's got like they're just broke all the time, and it's some sort of emissions bullshit. stuff. And like they're nice feed trucks, but it's never the air conditioning that's broke. It's always the fucking engine.
Always, it always has something to do with the DEF. Almost
always has something to do with the emissions. And you're like, if you unrestrict the emissions, the whole motherfucker runs better.
Hey, I'll be right back, Matt. I gotta use the bathroom again real quick.
Hold on. Sounds good. I do too. We'll be right back. All right, we're back. Coming back to the regulation stuff, I think that will help tremendously to just do a lot of shit within the economy. That's the main thing. Is just it helps. It makes your average everyday user of something somewhat of an engineer overnight, because they're like, oh, I could fix it by doing this, and the company would be like, oh yeah, I can do that now because there's not this regulation on me. And so there's that. Also, we've got to shore up the U.S. dollar, which has been the big backstop of the American empire to date. You were telling me some stuff about this. Essentially, well, I don't even know how to explain it, so I'll let you go into it.
Yeah, well, I'm probably, I'm going to do my best, but this is actually pretty new to me, and I had never thought of this previously. But everyone talks about the U.S. dollar. The reason why, arguably, the U.S. is so powerful and we can run this budget deficit is we export our inflation. We just inflate the currency, but since everyone has to have dollar reserves because that's what oil's traded in.
Yep.
We can't. All these countries hold U.S. dollars, and they're just happy to let those dollars slowly devalue because they have to trade in oil for that. So the thinking is, but it also it's a double-edged sword because there's so much what they say euro dollars, which what that actually means is offshore dollars that the other countries hold. We aren't able to control our monetary policy too much because there's just so many dollars out there. So the thinking is, instead of is there a way for one to issue bonds, which is what the United States does. They'll issue bonds when they've got to print money and pay interest on those bonds. Is there a way to do it better? And I heard this, and I have to give credit to Tom Luongo, but it's actually something Scott Bessent, who's the Secretary of the Treasury currently, has talked about previously. And I got this in Tom Luongo's Gold Goats and Guns newsletter, and I was reading it. And if you don't care, Matt, I'm just going to read some of this from that because I don't want to screw it up. But essentially, Bessent has talked. This is from the article. Bessent has talked explicitly about wanting to do a cash for housing equity swap to again mobilize the savings of Americans and put it to work. As of Q3 of 2024, there's approximately $32 trillion in homeowner equity in the U.S., with more than half of homeowners having more than 50% equity in their mortgage property. The average home value is $311,000 in equity, which translates to $203,000 in tappable equity at a loan-to-value ratio of 80% or $24 trillion. What Bessent is likely to offer is a government-backed 0% HELOC, home equity line of credit. That HELOC wouldn't be transferable and no second mortgage can be taken out against it. It is a simple equity for cash arrangement. So essentially, the government's going to give you cash. They're going to have some equity in your home. You're going to turn around and take that cash forcibly, I guess, and buy their bonds. Okay, so now you have government bonds and you've given up a portion of equity in your home, maybe like 20%. That HELOC shouldn't be transferable, and no second mortgage can be taken out against it. It is a simple equity for cash arrangement. The Treasury would offer you a 10-year 3% bond in exchange for the equity against your house. What kind of money are we talking about here in real terms? A typical HELOC is drawn up against a 10-year amortization schedule, meaning your monthly payment is set as if you borrowed the entire note, which you pay back over 10 years. For a $100,000 HELOC over 10 years at 3%, that's a payment of $965 per month. So then the government, instead of like issuing bonds and relying on other countries to buy these bonds and us paying interest to those other countries who are holding the bonds, they're going to own a portion of your home, issue cash. The cash is going to be essentially buy the bonds, and then they're going to pay you interest. So at this point, you still own the majority of your home. You've given up a portion of equity as a loan to the government, and now they're having to pay interest on that. So the average homeowner in America is then looking at a potentially $1,930 per month check for lending to the government against their house. Even a 20% participation rate here is at $5 to $6 trillion cash infusion to the government, paying just 3%, which would both clean up the balance sheet side of the equation, as we now truly owe the money to ourselves, as Keynesians lied to us all for all these years, and undo the damage done by Janet Yellen over the past 4 years. See, Janet Yellen, when interest rates were dirt cheap and weren't paying anything, she rolled over a ton of debt, and instead of issuing long-term bonds at a really low interest rate, she did short-term stuff, and now we're having to roll it over at a higher interest rate. So in order to prevent a big jump in interest payments for the United States, we could basically do this like reverse HELOC, if you will, for the American people. And if you own equity in your home, you would get an interest payment that arguably would probably offset all your income tax that you would ever pay. And essentially, if you're a homeowner and you've invested in a home, it's a way to like unlock that equity and get some monthly income that way, instead of sending that interest payment abroad. So it's an interesting theory. And the Secretary, it's not something that's totally in the ether, with the Secretary of Treasury, Scott Bessent, actually even talking about this before. So when you think about that, it does another thing. All right, if you're middle class and you've been paying into your home, this gets you better cash flow each month. So arguably you could increase your consumerism. I hate to put it that way, but right, you have more disposable income to spend.
Right.
It at least alleviates the pressure that's currently on you economically. And so now what you're looking at is, with tariffs potentially going up, or reciprocity tariffs or whatever Trump's calling it, if you're a company, you're thinking, okay, well, now all of a sudden Americans going to have more disposable income, and I should start, and if we have tariffs, but they'll allow you to invest in the United States, have a capital investment and manufacture goods in America, because all of a sudden it becomes more of a investable country, because one, it's not just about cheap labor anymore, because you have tariffs and all this, but you still want to manufacture goods and sell them to the largest consumer nation in the world.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting theory, and that's actually, now the homeowner thing is a little bit different, but that's a lot of what happened during the Gilded Age, was the tariffs and making manufacturing a lot of goods, and companies wanting to manufacture in the United States. And I didn't really even know this, but a lot of companies apparently at post-World War II, we actually helped set up, I didn't know this, we helped set up LG, Samsung, and other other Japanese companies. I think also there's a bunch of European companies that actually we helped set up, and then we protected them by allowing those countries to have quite large tariffs on our goods. So, and those tariffs still exist today. And so Europe and other countries have had this unfair competitive advantage. So
For a
I
long
think,
time, yeah.
yeah, so I think this is a pretty interesting way to help shore up our balance sheet. The other theory too was we need to revalue our gold. Right now, our gold on the Fed balance sheet is like at $42 an ounce, which is
Mm-hmm.
laughable because gold is currently at 3,000 and is going to go higher, in my opinion.
Yeah.
This is an investment advice, by the way. But I think there is a run on gold right now. It seems to be reflective in the price ever increasing. So if we revalued the gold on our balance sheet, all of a sudden we have an extra trillion on our balance sheet. So, and they're talking about having some treasuries that are somewhat backed by gold. It's kind of what Russia talked about. So I'm saying all this to say there's a way to absorb the dollars if we are going off the petrodollar, in
Mm-hmm.
which seems to be kind of trending. I think the total fiat currency, world reserve currency of the US dollar is actually going to go away, and I think it may go away faster than what we realize. But if we do that, how can we absorb all these dollars and prevent like hyperinflation, essentially, of people dumping dollars potentially? Now, I don't think Europe has much of a choice to dump. They can't really dump dollars, but maybe China to an extent can. But it's a way for us to reissue, roll over our debt at just 3%. Provide cash flow to Americans. And by the way, after 10 years of the government paying you the interest on this bond, the equity in your home goes back to you. So it helps retirees too. People who are only drawing a Social Security check, but they do own their home.
Boy,
So
that's
it's an interesting theory, and I
oh,
kind of
that's
like it.
gonna lead to an explosion of growth in Arizona and Florida. Snowbird Deluxe. That is Fox News is gonna be nothing but commercials for that HELOC.
But here's the thing. Here's the other kicker that they would join it up with. Okay, so Freddie Mae and Fannie Mac, which we know were involved in the financial crisis of issuing these subpar mortgages, etc., right? The theory is we need to take them out of conservatorship and list them on the New York Stock Exchange. And basically, right now, the Fed, I think the Fed owns these officially. I forget who actually officially owns Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac or whose balance sheet they're on. I think it actually is the United States government now, but they're in conservatorship. And the whole thinking behind that is, get them out, get those revaluated. And the reason being is, I think the number was here somewhere. It was, and this was also from that same newsletter of Tom Luongo, Gold, Goats, and Guns, but it was like, together they have a net worth of more than $154 billion. And if you check with AI, how many companies in the world had net earnings greater than $28 billion equivalent in 2024? And it's only like the Saudi Arabia, Aramco, Apple, Berkshire Hathaway, Alphabet, Microsoft, ICBC, JP Morgan Chase, China Construction Bank, and Meta Platforms. So the thing is, take these out of conservatorship, list them on the stock exchange, make the capital gain from that, help that pay down some of the debt or ownership or whatever, and sell the cash flow from that as well, because it's such a large financial institution. They're actually having net earnings. So some interesting things that can be done that everyone's like, America's broke, and maybe that's not so true.
The government is broke as it is right now.
Well, the problem, I would say, is not maybe as much of our balance sheet, maybe, but our income statement. So we need to trim expenses and have better cash flow, but we've got on the balance sheet, it is fixable. Of course, to fix your balance sheet, you have to revalue things, sell things, whatever, but you also have to get your income statement under control, which I think is being done with Doge, although they did pass the budget and they're still having a huge deficit. So they've got to fix that. And if they fix that, we would be the most financially sound country, arguably in the world. And if we do that, and you're a country, whose debt do you want to hold? A country that's financially and fiduciary responsible, or do you want to hold like some German 10-year bonds when their economy and manufacturing base is shrinking and their energy cost is 28 cents a kilowatt compared to
by the
11
way,
cents in
that
America.
lifeline that they built, we blew up. And
you know what? I don't know if we blew it up.
You don't think
I thought
so?
it was a slam dunk, but I don't know.
Who do you think did it?
I think potentially the British or others. I don't know. But, Seymour Hersh, I thought, was pretty reliable source of journalist. Maybe he has a connection inside. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe we did blow it up. I don't know. But he recently wrote an article that was just completely unhinged, and he lost the plot. He was talking about how terrible Trump was, and it was just complete propaganda, just silliness, and showed a lack of understanding of the bigger picture of things. And when I read that, I was like, is this guy kind of a captured pawn in some way? I mean, how did he get the scoop on all these stories? I mean, it's one of those things where if you tell the truth enough, you can tell a lie and everyone believes it. So I don't know. Obviously we have a special school down in Panama City, outside Panama City, that specializes in underwater demolition, which makes you skeptical. But the other crazy theory that people have, which it's out there in the ether, is what if Americans buy the Nord Stream pipeline and we sell gas to the Europeans through our pipeline with the Russians, which would be just a real slap to the face of the Europeans. But I think it's actually on the table from what I've heard.
See, I've asked many a time of like, what is the reason I should hate Russia? And it always goes back to like communism, Cold War. Like, but they are not communist anymore. Like that's we acknowledge that as like the Soviet Union fell, it broke apart, and the communists did not win the elections in Russia. You can, whether it was legitimate or whatnot, we cheered that the communists did not win in Russia, and they have never been back in power.
Well, there's a really good guy, I forget his name, something Poe, but anyhow, Richard Poe, I think. He wrote a book, How the British Invented Communism and Blamed It on the Jews. I think that's the title of the book. But I didn't know this. And this makes sense. During the 70s, what was the big theory that Kissinger had, right? We cannot push Russia and China together. We must always keep those superpowers apart. So that was our theory. Not really, it wasn't genius. It was kind of obvious, right? We don't want two superpowers coming together against us. So if you're the British, and let's rewind farther back after the American Revolution and fast forward to where you see the potential of America, your thinking is we don't want pre-Soviet Union, so Russia or whatever under who was it? I forget his name, Matt. That you don't want the United States, and
that'd been Khrushchev.
No, before the Soviet Union, when they overthrew the family.
Romanovs.
Yeah, the Romanovs. You don't want the United States and Russia coming together. Why? Because when you looked at Russia didn't quite have everything figured out militarily under the Romanovs. It wasn't a very good administration. The Romanovs weren't very good at administration, it doesn't seem.
No.
But the United States, the Russia supported the Union during the Civil War, loosely, and in word and in diplomacy, but also finally with some force towards the end. And why did they want that? They wanted the United States to stay together, to be the counterbalance to the British Empire, because the British had always been trying to break up Russia because they wanted to extract those resources like they did with India and other countries. So the thinking was for the British, much like the thinking that we had to keep China and Russia, the Soviet Union, apart, was we must keep Russia and the United States apart. But that's why Russia sold us Alaska pre-Soviet Union. Is originally there was some theories about building a railroad all the way that you could take all the way from Moscow to LA. And they didn't want that shift of power, because if we had that trade route, and that's why they sold Alaska not to the British Empire, which had Canada at that point. They sold it to the United States. So why the heck? I mean, so the argument then was that the British
Folly, it was called too.
It was what?
It was called Seward's Folly.
Yeah, and it was the best deal we ever got.
Oh yeah, by far, but value-wise, like way more valuable than the Louisiana Purchase at the time.
But see, Russia wanted to build this relationship with the United States before the Soviet Union, of course, and then the British actually made sure that America was joining World War I before they actually then kind of supported the rise of communism and the overthrow of the Romanovs in Russia, which formed the Soviet Union during World War I. So the British had a theory. There's a pretty big theory, and I think the British were, like we were talking about, they're better building. They've had a lot more practice at building empire. They had the same theory that we had with China and the Soviet Union. Never push those two superpowers together. They didn't want the United States to be pushed together with Russia. And I think there's an argument that they're trying the same BS currently, and Trump sees through it. And he's like, we're going to partner up with Russia. And how great would it be if you could hop on a train from LA and go to Moscow, through Canada, through Alaska, through all of Russia. And we put a big ass pipeline there too, and open up that trade route of all of Asia running through Russia, the United States trading back and forth that way. How amazingly economically and beneficial would that be to the United States? I think that's what Europe is fearful of right now.
Well, and then how quickly does China come to heel when, if that happens, because you got the two biggest nuclear superpowers staring down at you, and you got the manufacturing capacity, you got the people, but it goes back to Germany in both world wars. You don't have the ability to feed yourself.
Well, China, I think, their population is going to die out, and they're going to have a rapid decline in population.
Yeah,
there's some arguments that they have just massive amounts of housing that's not even filled. I mean, buildings to nowhere. And this is where my traditional Austrian business cycle theory hat comes on, and I think it will ring true with China, is they've tried to design what they imagine, and it's not going to work out because the economic calculation that a free market truly is much greater than what a centrally planned economy, which is, not okay. Fair enough. China isn't completely centrally planned, but it is to a large extent. And I think they've miscalculated their economy immensely. And they're going to have a real problem in the next 50 years, probably not even that much in the next 30, 20 years.
Yeah.
Because if you look at their demographics, it's so bad. It's like much worse than the boomers. It's like population, and then there's this huge chunk of people, and all of a sudden when those people die and retire and all their equity and savings is in their homes, they're going to sell their homes. It's going to just completely wipe out. It's going to be the financial crisis, except to a magnitude of 1,000 in China.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not long China. And I think it will come down to Russia with all the resources, resource rich Russia and the United States coming to some terms. And if we do that, I think the partnership could be unstoppable.
I think I'm not long on China either. But I also don't want to go to war with them because as of right
Oh,
now, they've got orders of magnitude more people they can throw at 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 a wall.
that's the problem though. Just go nuclear. I think it's no longer like I mean, it's still mutual destruction. Is
Yeah,
that theory is still in place?
I think so too. And then like China's kind of got us over a barrel at the moment because they manufacture all of our shit and like a lot of our military stuff too. And you're like, that seems like the worst idea
It's so
ever.
stupid. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like I was in DC, and right there, well, it's actually technically Alexandria or Old Town Alexandria,
Hmm.
and what is now it's so sad, right? What is now seemingly quite a liberal art gallery used to be where they made torpedoes. And they had some torpedoes still in there. I was checking out those torpedoes more than the artwork because let's be honest, torpedoes are
Yeah.
way cooler than liberal art. There was some good art, whatever, but the torpedoes
Well,
were awesome.
that's art in and of itself. It's just
And it's like,
military art.
yeah, and it's like, why do we not? Why it's so sad. It's always sad for me, especially even running up the Ohio River here in the Panhandle around West Virginia. Is there's all these steel plants that are abandoned, and I mean, when you drive up around the Rust Belt, and I mean, I'm talking around Pittsburgh and Weirton, West Virginia, and stuff. I mean, the miles of steel plants up there that aren't doing anything just depresses the heck out of you. I mean, the largest arch bridge of steel, arch bridge, I think it's arch bridge, used to be here in West Virginia across the New River Gorge, and it was made from U.S. Steel Bridge Company. Boom. And I mean, it was the world's largest, and they could just churn that out and ship the steel down by rail, and they made the world's largest thing just down here in West Virginia, like boom, no problem. And we've got to get back to a country where
Mm,
it's like I mean, you don't even hear about like Bethlehem Steel, U.S. Steel, all this
I
stuff,
know it.
but that's what we got to get back to is the meat and potatoes of what made the country great.
Oh, I know. It's I think I don't know. Our ancestors really I don't they realized without even realizing what they had stumbled upon when they set up colonies here. Like so I've got I don't know how far back my northern European side of the family goes in 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 North America, but I know I can trace my roots back to 1871 on the Spanish side, which means they've been there way longer than that. When the first U.S. census they appeared on was 1871, and I know they were I know they were there before that. If they
Veteran.
um so it's it just I don't even remember where I was going with that, but yeah, it's just funny how like how we oh yeah they like
You're saying the ancestors didn't know what they stumbled upon.
like they knew, but they didn't really know what they knew they had found something good, but they didn't realize the magnitude of what they'd really uh set foot upon, and so yeah, like we have like we capitalized on that for a while, and then and it just that it kind of goes to this reaction with to that meeting with Trump and Zelensky, where for me, I'm just like when JD Vance was like, "Hey, you're being disrespectful here," I was like, "All right, that's I think so too. I think
Yeah.
so too." And then I watched back and forth several times, and Donald Trump is he is in the moment and in his moment, and he is shining like this is his game, and you're like he's sitting back and he's watching reactions. He's like jumping in here and there, and he's like, the reporter asked the question about the suit, which I think was a valid question, but not the moment for it.
He probably could have phrased that. Yeah, it didn't need to be the first question.
No, and it didn't need to. You don't need to be a dick.
He was kind of a dick. He could have framed it a little bit differently. But you know what? He wore a suit when he met with Klaus Schwab, the World Economic Forum. He wore a suit when he met with Starmer and the Brits. He wore a suit when he met with Netanyahu. So what? He can't wear a freaking suit when he comes meets the POTUS at the White House? Like, give me a break.
In the Oval Office? Come on.
I probably wouldn't tour the White House without wearing at least a coat. Just on a dumb tour.
I went on a tour when I was a kid, and I had it was a collared shirt. I remember that because I didn't know what the fuck it was, but I remember I was not allowed to go on that tour without a collared shirt. I think I wore
I know there's people that are like pissed on tradition and all this, and I'm like, no. Tradition does matter. I don't care. It just does. And it's just, but the thing is, it's like everybody else.
It's a sign of respect. And for that matter, I'm kind of not okay when Elon walks in with a blazer.
It looks and a t-shirt. Trashy.
Yeah. I don't care for it. But also Elon, and we could go into that and how many government contracts he has, but also I feel like the shit that the services and products that Elon is providing to the government with our taxpayer dollars are getting used. Yeah, there's value there behind it. So while there is a conflict of interest for sure, I think he's fighting an actual value with our tax dollars as opposed to a lot of this other bullshit.
I mean, it seems that, and not to get too off topic, it seems that he is using, his goal has always been space, and PayPal, Tesla, Starlink, the Boring Company, SpaceX, all this crap is to hit Twitter. It's all ties in to the goal to go to Mars, I think. That's what he really wants to do. That's kind of like his calling, if you will. And I think when he sees that the United States, which is the means that he needs to get to space, is falling, he feels called to fix it.
Yeah.
And there's some people
that's an interesting point of view. I never thought about it like that.
And to him, it's like, somebody said it, I saw it, this is a side quest. Fixing the United States is a side quest, because who was the country that, I mean, people can argue it, whatever, who either did a really good job faking a person to the moon or did go to the moon, but they still had the Saturn V rockets. They still put people in space. So no matter what you believe, the United States is the country of space pioneering, along with the Soviet Union, but not so much now, right? So Elon Musk needs what's best for the United States to not crumble, because it's his hope to go to Mars, if that's truly his dream and calling.
So this is the thing that really puzzles me with the reaction to this Zelensky-Trump deal. And so, like, to put a bow on that, I think Elon is I think I agree a lot with what you're saying there. Like, I hadn't heard it put that way, but that makes a lot of sense to me. So that being said, he should still wear a fucking suit to the White House.
Agree. It wouldn't hurt him.
I'm like famously anti-suit. Like, I don't like the office setting at all. I don't I like to dress on my terms. But that being said, yeah, I also I know this, like, know your fucking situation, man.
Mhm.
Like that's the whole thing, and that says a lot as a leader. You know, like everybody's like, he's a hero. He didn't flee the country, and I agree with that. I legit do. Like, regardless if you're being backstopped by the American government or not, in those countries where when there's when you have fucking Russia invade, yeah, there's probably going to be a really strong pull to flee to, you know, England or you know, Paris or London, and have, you know, a government in exile. I mean, that's happened how many times throughout history, and he didn't. So, like, props to him. That's like legit props to him.
How
For
much
that.
time is he actually in Ukraine though? Because he's now in England, and then before this
All
he
right,
was
so
in
there's that.
France.
There's that. I'm
I don't mean, I'm not trying to argue
yeah,
your
no,
point.
I
No,
agree with you.
I I,
Now,
I know
like,
your
so,
point in theory, or I don't know how much time he's actually been in Ukraine, but you know he could have just fled, and he
yeah,
had enough money he could have. So
yeah. So
fair
I'm
enough.
like, at the very least, like, I I won't say that guy's a bitch. I'll say he's a corrupt, rotten, evil motherfucker at times. Um,
Hmm.
but the guy's not a bitch. He is a serious player in a very unserious position. Like, it doesn't matter how serious he thinks he is. You're the president of Ukraine, who has lost what, 20% of his territory.
I have no idea
It's
at this
somewhere
point.
around
A
that, I think.
substantial amount.
Yeah. So, no matter how serious he thinks he is, he's not. He's just not. And that was what showed up in that meeting. And for all the people that are on Zelensky's side, like, I can, like I said, well, that's the point I'm trying to make. I can sympathize with him being like a hero to his people. Like, I
Hmm.
think in those early days, I think for sure, like, he, as much as I don't like the guy, that's I can rally behind somebody when they make an act of bravery, and I think that was when he stuck around. That being said, he has sent his troops into no-win situations. Mariupol was like this
Yeah.
long, protracted battle, and if you listen to military experts, they're like, "Hey, if they would have withdrawn from the city and taken the high ground outside of that, they could have held on for a long, long time."
Yeah.
Bakhmut is another one that where
Dumb.
um, it's by Ukrainian estimates about 10,000 soldiers. So probably add at least another 10 on top of that, at least.
You know,
Um, for a
I looked
city
up.
that had no strategic significance at all, like it was not a major hub of any sort of transportation whatsoever, and also had high ground right outside it where they could have withdrawn and held out for a long time and sustained very little losses.
Yeah. I think the biggest, I think if we're back to like the United States shoring up our resources, our capital, and
Mm-hmm.
everything, to me, the United States has made an honest effort to try to broker some peace. Now, I mean, I would say this: the Biden administration was a captured pawn of the Ukrainian oligarch Kolomensky, who owns also who owns Zelensky. And you know, the United States was just fueling the war. At least 175 billion. Trump's saying 300 billion. It probably is more like 300 billion would be
Yeah,
my guess. There's
but
probably a
and
lot
then
of
to Zelensky's credit, the actual dollar amount that made it over there is probably a whole lot less, because most of those dollars stayed here in the U.S. and they went to companies like Raytheon and Lockheed and Boeing.
But, who knows really what the dollar amount is, but now the United States needed to make amends for the wrongs of pushing Ukraine for war. And, by us trying to broker a peace or talking to the Russia in Saudi Arabia with Marco Rubio, Witkoff, and who was the other guy and part of that special envoy or
was it Besant?
I don't think Besant was there, but anyhow, it doesn't matter. They met with Lavrov and hit the Russian diplomats, and I think that Putin really
went
would
to Ukraine, not that peace summit.
And I think Putin would really make like to make a peace deal, because let's be real, it's eating up manpower on the Russian side. They have a wartime economy.
It hasn't been great for them. They're coming out ahead.
Great for any country.
No,
that level of war at all.
And the way that Russia fights, they've ramped up their production a bunch, and then adding North Korea into the mix,
that was a very weird move, by the way.
It was, until you see what they're producing, and it was 155 artillery shells. And that's like the bulk of the fighting is done. Like the drones and Ukraine has made massive leaps in the improvements in drone technology. So much so that they went to Syria and trained these Al-Qaeda guys that we're friends with, even though we're supposed to be at war with Al-Qaeda.
The drone thing is absolutely terrifying. The footage of that stuff, it just terrifies me. These guys have very little chance. I mean, it takes a couple people in a squad shooting at a drone to bring it down. I mean, sure, there's some people that are better than others with the shotgun.
Literally, for the first time since World War I, the shotgun has been a standard squad or platoon weapon.
It's a necessity for sure.
Yeah. And that's strictly, you're going to have a bunch of Midwest goose hunters that are going to be nothing but the shotgun guy in their regiment.
They're just the anti-drone mechanism in a small squad patrol. Yeah.
Well, and then they've got those, I've seen on the Russian tanks, they've got those net launchers, and that's what they've used to counter the suicide drones.
I tell you what,
it's terrifying. Like I said, it's like the Sino or the Russo-Japanese War, which was the precursor to World War I. We got a little flavor of what full-scale conflict would look like between major powers in that Russo-Japanese War. And then we saw the brunt of it in World War I. And then we took it to another level in World War II. And now, holy fuck, man.
Well, I was asking AI how many soldiers the Ukrainian military had at the beginning of the war. And it said they had 196,000 regular infantrymen. And so then I was like, well, how many people have been wounded and killed? And of course, they're reporting a really low number of 20,000 or 40,000 killed on the Ukrainian side.
I think,
but they've reported 300,000 casualties. So it begs the question, and what JD and Trump were saying, JD said specifically is you don't have the manpower. And when you think about that, and you've seen the videos of them grabbing basically kids and young men off the street to fight on the fronts, I really wish I knew how much manpower they have left.
But then you also hear about in these European ski resorts of just nothing but Ukrainians driving Lambos and shit, and you're like, so they're pulling literal retards off the street to send them to the front line, but Vladimir over here with his Lambo and his Hummer is just hanging out in the Alps.
I've also heard that there is a significant amount of Ukrainian women who have either fled Ukraine or are still in Ukraine and have had to resort to prostitution to make ends meet because either their whole town or civilization basically that they lived in was destroyed and their husbands and sons have all been killed. And so they're just, I mean, they're screwed. I mean, they just don't have anything.
How much weight do you put on any of the claims that Zelensky was making about, like the Ukrainian children being, moved to Russia and then just being placed with new families there? How much stock do you put in that?
Well, actually, I think he's projecting. There is some pretty compelling evidence that, first of all, Ukraine has always traditionally been in Europe known as one of the highest child trafficking, human trafficking countries in Europe before,
because it's always been known as like the frontier land between from east to it's always been like the dividing line of east to west.
Well, before this war even broke out, they were notoriously involved in child trafficking and all kinds of terrible things. And so I suspect that he is projecting this on the Russians of what he may be. And there's some argument. I've seen some arguments and stuff about his wife being potentially involved in trafficking. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's weird. Like, that's his accusation when it's like, yeah, but your country was absolutely plagued with that before the war even. Yeah. So
they talked about it in the American media before the war too.
Yeah, I mean, you read the American media about Ukraine before the war, and you're like, oh my gosh! And if you look at the headlines, you can go back in the archive. There's 420 pages on antiwar.com, and you go dial into 2014, and you read the headlines, and you're like, oh my gosh! I didn't know that this stuff was going on in Ukraine, and they were reporting on it back then.
Well, there was like something like 14,000 people killed in that civil war before Russia invaded in 22. It was it was a long enduring deal.
But I think the United States, we have to pay our penance for what the Biden administration encouraged in Ukraine.
Yeah.
We tried to make a deal, broker peace. I think if Zelensky, and I'll say that whole interview, what I noticed is Zelensky would have to make chirps. He kind of chirped at the United States throughout that interview. Like, Trump would be like, the United States has given more than any other country.
He's like, well, no, Europe.
And he's like, well, no, the Europeans. I'm like, dude, shut up. Do you not understand? You're with Trump. You need to kiss his ass here. So just shut up. And I was like, okay. And that's why when
all he had to do was shut up. He didn't even have to kiss Trump's ass. He didn't have to talk.
He should have used a translator. So the translator could have dulled things down to where it wasn't so sharp. But, I think JD had I had probably a similar impression that JD Vance had, that throughout that whole 50 minutes prior or 45 minutes or whatever prior to the blow up, it seemed like Trump would say something and Zelensky would have to get the last word or say, and I'm like, just shut up and sign the deal and, get to peace, and I do believe Trump actually wants peace. I think he also wants to come out with something from
I think so
peace.
Too.
Well, but he does want peace.
So that deal they were going to sign is like the best compromise between the people who want the fuck out of Ukraine and the people that are like, we got to help them out. Like, well, here at least we start getting some money back from the deal, and it goes on the back of these giant corporations that are on, that have all these politicians on their tit. So it scratches all the backs right there. And it gives a huge deterrent for Russia to keep going, because they're like, no, if we keep we keep going, then we butt up against American companies, which means we butt up against the American military, which we're not willing to do.
And I think the other thing, and it makes sense. I mean, if Ukraine wants to be a country in a couple years, if they still want to have an area
sort of
where
sovereignty,
there is quote like ethnically Ukrainian people, then they better be finding peace soon, because they're gonna fight to the last Ukrainian. It feels like under Zelensky and the EU.
well,
they
and
just want
the
to fight
people
this
that are
war.
willing to keep it going on our side are more than willing to fight to the last Ukrainian, because
And they are psychopaths and out of power. Thank God, for the most part.
Yeah,
The
for the most part.
And I mean, those people,
yeah,
they are horrible people, and I think Americans see them for what they are now, for the most part. But Europeans are still delusional about who these people are, and I could see where Europe would be pissed, right? Because arguably, they thought the United States was always going to back Ukraine, and now we're like, actually, Trump and the Trump administration is like, actually, this is your pile of shit, and you're going to have to deal with it. But at least America's like, hey, let's make peace. But if America is now like, okay, well, we can't make peace because Zelensky won't step down because he is a dictator. He's the FDR kind of, not even FDR, but he's like, didn't do the Ukrainian elections. So
FDR wishes he had that constitution.
He wishes. But Putin now is like, he can't be, I'm not going to sign a deal with him because he's illegitimate. And I think the United States is like,
that's one of the craziest things about this whole sequence of events is, so if you look back to when they annexed Crimea, they talk about like special forces parachuting in. No, it was Crimea. They didn't even have to. All they had to do was march outside the naval base that was already there.
Yeah.
Like that they did. I think there was like 2 people killed in that the overtaking of the annexation of Crimea.
Oh yeah.
Because like 80% of the population there is ethnic Russian. They want to be Russian. The person that gave Crimea to Ukraine was a Ukrainian, Khrushchev. But then the oblasts there, or the states, or provinces, whatever I think they call them oblasts, but it's Luhansk and Donetsk, which is where the main fighting was happening during this whole civil war period. They voted to join Russia, and Putin said, "No, we can't do that. We can't do that." And they did not overtly intervene in that conflict. They sent some special forces people, off the books type stuff. They were definitely involved, but they did not send the military in until they sent an ultimatum to NATO. I didn't realize this at the time. Nobody knew it until 3 years later or whatever. But they sent an ultimatum to NATO in September before they invaded, and said, if Ukraine cannot be in NATO, if you push this issue, we will have to invade and take that off the table.
It was never covered, and Putin made it very clear on many occasions.
And what did we do? We sent Kamala Harris to say that Ukraine will be in NATO one day, and Russia invaded 3 days later. So like the red line was drawn in the sand, and we was like, nah, fuck your red line. And he said, no, fuck you. This is not happening. And that was a fight that he didn't want to do. Like, it had not been good for Russia.
And the thing about it is, Donald Trump, he is the most braggart person you'll ever meet. Like, even through that whole press conference, I was like, dude, yeah, we know you won. You won the election, Donald Trump. Thank you for reminding us.
No, he keeps half.
And you won the popular vote. And yes, if you look at most of the country, it's mostly red, except in urban areas where
you
it's
look
blue.
when he snapped the most was when he was talking about Joe Biden. He's like, this stupid guy.
The thing is, the crazy thing about Trump is through that whole press conference, I felt he was fairly reserved, except when he talked about Biden and the persecution that he had. You can tell. I'm for it because I like Donald Trump with a big chip on his shoulder, and especially now he's figured out who the real enemies are. But he was actually pretty subdued and kind of let Zelensky kind of chirp a little bit at the United States.
And JD have his moment too. He's like, all right, let
he was like, yeah, okay,
the young buck talk.
But
and then he's like, oh, you're not going to threaten America. You're not going to threaten America.
But yeah, when he said, it'll come to your ocean, he was like, that's enough. And that is so
you don't know that. You don't know that.
You don't know that. I mean, I was like, Zelensky, you can't say that. You can't throw that out there. So anyhow, I think the United States has washed our hands of this whole Ukrainian war thing, or are getting very close to.
I'm so glad that thing was live. I'm so glad that.
Oh my god!
And he said it too. He's like, I think people need to see it. I think so
he
too.
Said, this is going to be good television. Even in the moment, he knew it was.
He knew gold. That, like, because at his heart, that's what he is. Like, even more so than the real estate stuff. He's like, I know good media. I know good TV.
He really is. He's good at TV. But I think we can wash our hands of that. We've tried. Fair enough. We've tried, and that can be the Europeans. They can handle that bag, and they'll find out that the United States. I mean, Trump would not say that he would backstop security forces of the British.
Yeah.
He did not commit to anything to Macron as well. The Europeans have nothing, and the Ukrainians have nothing. And I think the United States is probably going to try to normalize relations with Russia and get back to trading.
We should. And again, it always goes back to the Cold War stuff when you ask, like, why should I hate Russia? And they're like, well, they're communists. Well, no, they are not. They were literally not. They've had election, well, and they always say, well, they're Russian election. Well, is there any legitimate elections? Because, like, there's still questions about 2020, whether people want to admit it or not. I've got questions.
It seems like more and more stuff's coming out. And Romania, they had an election. A guy won. And then they said, nope, we're going to do it again.
Brazil, everybody think that Lula guy is legit. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't think Bolsonaro was exactly legit either, but I think that's what it is down there. I think that's what legit elections are all around the world. And somebody asked me the other day if I thought, because I said, you can call the Russian elections legit or not, but if they held a legit election today, Putin would still win. You think? He's like, you think with a majority? And I said, no, I think with a super majority.
Yeah.
No, Putin is very popular over there.
There's I do know an American living in Russia. He married a Russian girl, and I asked him. I emailed him a couple times. I'm like, hey, how are things? He's like, honestly, not that bad. I'm like. He's like, this whole like portrayal of Russia like collapsing is just completely not true. And I take his word. He's from Nebraska originally.
Yeah.
He knows. And, I honestly, I knew when I studied abroad, it was always funny because it was like NATO versus the Warsaw Pact. Because when we played intramural sports, it was always like the Americans, British, and maybe a Frenchman or two on a team, and we were always playing the Russians,
the Frenchman just kept score,
and like a Ukrainian. Now, luckily, like when we were playing basketball, we had like some guys that were AAU guys, and we put on it. It was great. We put on like kind of a show.
I say nowadays the Europeans have kind of caught up on basketball.
I don't know though, but we put on a clinic against the. I mean, I want to say I was proud. We put the Warsaw Pact in their place on that. But actually, when I talked to some of the Russians about what they thought of Putin and stuff, they're like, oh, he's all right. He's all right. He's like trying to get law and order in place. And that was back in 2010, and they were like, yeah, Putin's all right. And I don't think I think the economic prosperity of the country has grown. The life expectancy has increased. There's actually a reversion to traditional values. The church attendance has increased in Russia and things like that. I think, Putin has, I don't know if he's really religious or not, but he has kind of like pushed that a little bit because he knows it's a good basis for society.
He's a KGB guy. He knows shit.
Yeah.
He knows how people's minds work.
I think he saw that atheism was a major problem in the Soviet Union because it just destroyed hope and stuff. And I think he would, if he was smart, he would definitely recognize that religion needs to be part of a society.
He's made it a pretty big, the Russian Orthodox Church has made a massive comeback. Yeah, massive.
But I think the United States can now pivot. If we got to get away from this whole Ruski thing and Ruski scare thing that we've got going on, and let's make a super durable, like broad deal with Russia, and we can include the Saudis in there, whatever, because they're brokering this. Let's all get in on this, and let's just do our own thing. And
honestly, if we can get Iran somewhere on speaking terms, that's a good thing, because they control that whole what is it, leading up to the Suez Canal, the Red Sea.
Yeah. I think we need to I'm for making a deal with Iran, and you know what?
I am too. It's going to be tough because we got a lot of Iran hawks on both sides of the aisle, and I think Trump's a little bit of an Iran hawk himself. I mean, he took out that Soleimani guy, but I feel like he was like, I took out the main guy. Let's cut a deal.
I think, you know how they say Iran, allegedly was trying to assassinate Trump, and that they have a hit out on him.
I think that was.
I think that's a grift.
That was a deep scape scare. Yeah.
So you know what I think? I think that Trump, he's playing this perfectly, and I never thought he would. But think about this: who was backstopping Iran? Russia.
Mm-hmm.
Russia. Who did Russia want to come to power? They didn't want Biden and Kamala. They wanted Trump.
Yep.
Putin obviously wanted Trump. They obviously have a relationship, and they can talk to each other. And Putin wants that. I think he's a gangster, but he's good to his
so
word.
Is Trump, though. Trump's a gangster.
Trump's a gangster too, but they're both good to their word, I would say.
Yeah.
Mob bosses,
I think that's right. And I don't mean gangster in a bad way, like that.
No, I mean government is all gangsters. Every country is gangster.
Yeah.
And so
I forget who said it, but it's like, the government is nothing but a criminal organization masquerading as a humanitarian organization.
Yeah. But I think the whole theory that Iran tried to assassinate Trump is BS, because if you're Russia, you don't want Iran to kill the guy you want to be in power. Mm-hmm. So Trump pretends. I think pretends that it was Iran, because it does two things. It kills two birds with one stone. One, it makes Iran is like, oh shit, they think Trump has it out for them, because they think that he thinks that they tried to kill him. So he's pissed at them. So they're going to be more like, this guy might pull the trigger on us. This could be bad.
And he's real friendly with the Israelis, who are just chomping at the bit to go at Iran.
And the second thing is this: the people or the organization or the deep state or whoever has been trying to kill Trump, they think now that Trump thinks that it was Iran and maybe not them, maybe. And so it does two things for Trump. It was going to get Iran in line and a little bit more respectful and concern over Donald Trump. Like, is he going to pull the trigger on us and wipe us off the face of the earth? And two, it also maybe the people who are trying to kill Trump, or who, if it is deep state after him, or a rogue faction of the United States or whatever, they are like, oh, well, he's not looking for us because he thinks it's Iran. And so it allows Trump to operate, get his people in charge, like Kash Patel and all these people, to start to actually investigate who's truly been trying to take him out, because there's just too much weird assassination stuff around Donald Trump to think that there's not somebody at least passing inside information to his enemies.
I know. And one guy that's like intimately tied to Ukraine. You're like, oh,
it's too bizarre. You have to think
weird.
Who had the most incentive to kill Trump? Oligarchs in Ukraine, and the Ukrainian government, because if they, I mean, a lot of people, Donald Trump has a lot of enemies, but they have more of an incentive than Iran, in my opinion, because they had the dirt on the U.S. president and his son, and could get the U.S. president and his son to do anything they wanted.
Oh, I think so.
And now
I think
they don't have any dirt on Donald J. Trump.
Yep, that's exactly right. I got to pee one more time, and then let's come back and wrap it up.
All right.
All right, we're back. Yeah, I think the Ukrainian thing. It's funny how I forget who I was talking to the other day, but it's funny how like all the weird shit that's happened over the last 10 or so years somehow leads back to Ukraine in one shape or form. Like
it really does.
Like the COVID stuff. Like that they trace that back to Wuhan, but then that opens the whole biolab thing. And then remember when they tried to tell us that the biolabs in Ukraine was a conspiracy theory, and then it turns out, oh no, there was like 28 of them or some shit like that. You're like,
the other crazy. I mean,
bunch.
The other thing too is it's like Gonzalo. I think his name is Gonzalo Lira.
Gonzalo Lira, yeah,
the Chilean American journalist who died under custody of the Ukrainian police. Who he's the guy who turned me on to Zolomoisky or whatever his name is, who really is kind of behind Burisma and Privat Bank, and also Zelensky and One-on-One Media. So anyhow, he said it best. He said there's lots of secrets hiding in Ukraine, and by many people and many politicians in the United States and then the West. The West uses Ukraine to hide their secrets. And of course, that's something he said, I think, not too long before he was arrested for the first time, and then he was arrested a second time. They said he died in hospital, like of pneumonia.
It's kind of like, New York was kind of the dumping ground of all the nasty stuff for a long time. And then as the country grew, Chicago became that dumping ground. San Francisco became that dumping ground. Dallas, and all these little smaller cities that kind of, I guess they're in the same vein as New York. They kind of modeled themselves after it, like a New York City, where they're, cosmopolitan and a lot of financial stuff there. But then you look behind the scenes and you're like, oh yeah, there's you guys got a lot of nasty stuff that makes you into this high society type deal.
Yeah, I mean, Ukraine is, by our own account, it was, by the United States account, it was the most corrupt nation, in all of Europe or the world or something.
For sure, Europe, maybe. I think Haiti. I think Haiti got the world title.
Well, it's probably only corrupt because the Clinton Foundation. But
remember when Donald Trump called them a shithole country and everybody freaked the fuck out, and then a couple years later they overthrew their government, and the main gang leader was eating his enemies.
I didn't know that. Holy cow! Sounds
Yeah,
like the Comanche Indians, and what was that other group of Indians that they caught eating Comanches? So then the
I
Comanches
can't
ate them
remember for sure
while they
on
were still
that, but
alive.
yeah. So
What the
this dude, his nickname was Barbecue, because
oh
he
my!
would cook his rivals. Yeah, and he was like the main like warlord of Port-au-Prince.
But I think though, with the United States, like get out of this whole Ukraine debacle,
Yep.
start trading with Russia, energy, you name it. Let's cut a deal and shore up our spending, our income statement, and
Well, and
start
use that
issuing
Russian
free up
influence.
income for your average American.
Use that Russian influence to bring China into the fold too. Like they don't have to like completely change to our standards, but like bring them to heel. Be like, hey, fucking settle down out there.
And realistically, though, Russia would rather be partner up with the United States than China
Russia
because
considers themselves a Western country. They always have, and they've never been considered one.
and Russia also look at I mean
At least the ruling class of Russia, like
yeah.
the Asiatics, don't really matter when it comes to Russia. Like 'cause they never really have. Like they're there, but they don't have a real say in what like how Russia operates.
But more importantly, what is Russia constantly living in fear of? Being invaded, having a bunch of
Mm-hmm.
tanks roll across, and
Mostly through Ukraine.
but also look at China. If China is like,
Yeah.
we need resources, look to the north. They look to the north.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah.
I think Russia, just strategically, it makes sense to have a durable and lasting partnership with the United States going forward. Now that we've put that terrible experiment of communism behind us, being the Soviet Union, they're looking around and they're like, look, the United States has done us dirty and we've done the United States dirty, but let's put that behind us because it does seem that if you're looking over a longer period of history, Russia and the United States has just, it makes sense. A good partnership, durable, lasting partnership. And I used to be the guy who just thought the Russians were total, I had a prejudice against the Russians.
Yeah, because we were brainwashed into that from a very, very. I mean, look, our entire life has been nothing but anti-Russian propaganda.
But if we normalize relations with Russia, by all means, I would go to Russia. I mean,
I would
I'm not going to break their laws like all these dumb Americans that get thrown in prisons that act like they're like prisoners or whatever. I'm not going to take weed to Russia and do all the illegal crap in Russia.
Go
being
smoke
Americans
Russian
break
weed.
Their laws.
Go smoke Russian weed.
Smoke Russian weed. Well, I can tell you this: I'm going to abide by their laws if I ever visit Russia.
Oh yeah. There's plenty of vodka. I think they give that out for free.
There's lots of other things to do in Russia. But I just think it makes sense. And you take a look around and have the Europeans been good allies?
Mm-mm.
And they haven't. I like Europeans. I like Europeans as a people, but they have chosen suicide. They have chosen to commit seppuku or whatever the Japanese term is. They have chosen to destroy, raise their energy.
It's amazing how they're so up in arms that Donald Trump disrespected Zelensky in his own house. By the way, mind you, you're over here in the United States of fucking America in the Oval fucking Office, and you expect our guy in his own house to be deferential. To be deferential and act like he's a vassal to Ukraine, the country that only exists because of us. Fuck you, dude.
I know.
Fuck you. Show a little bit of respect. I don't need the thank yous, but show a little bit of fucking respect.
And people, like, once again, when I watched that interview, he was chirping, being kind of a little bit snarky. And at least it came off. Maybe he didn't mean that because the language barrier, if we're being super generous, but if that is the case. But the thing is, the history was he was a screamer. He screamed at Scott Bessent, seemingly a very nice guy.
Well, and then I was reading right before we before you jumped on, there was so I got a very cursory read of it, but apparently he had met with some Democratic leaders before that told him to not push forward with the minerals deal.
I saw that as well. They said push back.
Yeah, and so it's like,
if that is true, though, if that was Newland, which there's some speculate, I think it was Newland, right, or some others.
I think so. I saw Chris Murphy, who wields actual power. Victoria Newland's kind of she's out in the ether right now. Like she doesn't have any institutional power at the moment.
But if there's factions of the U.S. government that told him to blow this up,
yeah,
and we can figure out exactly who said that, and man. You gotta try. I think there is. I don't know if there's anything what you can do. I don't know if it's like treason or meddling.
I don't know, but you gotta throw something at them.
At least fire their ass.
Yeah, at the very least,
pull security clearances.
They can be removed from office at some point.
I'm sure they. It wouldn't be hard. But
well, yeah, I mean, George Santos, they expelled him from Congress, so
yeah,
they can expel these fuckers too.
But also, if you pull their
security
clearance, make sure you pull their security clearance, so at least they don't know what's going on.
Yeah, Adam Schiff, that's another one. Like that, that's a motherfucker.
Something. I think he's gonna go. I think he's gonna go down.
He should.
He's touched. His fingers have been caught in the cookie jar too many times at this point. If it was just the Russian dossier or the Steele dossier, if it was just, one thing or another, but it's everything. Everything leads
back. Is he from San Francisco? I know he's California.
No, but that guy has got to go
because,
down.
L.A. gets all the attention because that's where all the actors go, so they crave attention. But the real nastiness of California is San Francisco because that's old California. That's old school California.
And the San Francisco Fed, too. That's where a lot of problems come out of our government. And, that's where all the bad loans for those. Some of the most valuable coins ever to be minted in Colorado or in the United States are from the Carson City Mint. And there was a big feud between Carson City and San Francisco for a while. Really?
Yeah, I don't know enough about it, but I do
don't know anything about that either.
I'm aware of it, mostly because my wife's from Nevada, and I think it's just kind of a Nevada thing.
Hate on California. I don't blame you.
Well, yeah, Nevada's the original California haters. We've always hated, and I say we because I'm coming up on 8 years of living here, so I might as well just call myself a Nevadan at this point.
But I think, though, if the United States can do those things, I think that we're looking to a brighter future, however, and can get manufacturing back. I mean, obviously, Japan, there's a lot of countries who are not completely clueless right now, who came back when Trump said, invest in our country. They were like, we're going to invest more in your country than you even asked for. We're going to come back with more. And I think Japan and a lot of these Asian countries and things like that.
South Korea must have been slipping because they're not doing so hot right. I mean, like Did
you ever look up how many ex-presidents or whatever prime ministers have died or gone to prison or been murdered in South Korea since?
No, I don't. And
it's know what? Every single one.
There's been a concerted effort by the public school system to not teach about the Korean War, and the more I've looked into that, that truly was a stalemate. Like the North Koreans pretty much took over the entire country, and when we stepped in, we pushed them back, basically had the entire peninsula, and then China stepped in and said, no, sir. And they steadily marched us back, and MacArthur said, nuke them, and I guess it was Eisenhower
It,
was president.
no, it was actually Truman, I think, at that
Oh,
point, wasn't it?
Truman, yeah, and Truman said no nukes, and that was
Truman had to fire him.
that was probably the right call.
Douglas MacArthur was an insane, egotistical maniac.
He was truly
Arguably
insane.
not a great military general, too. Hot take. My dad's named after him in part, but he kind of sucked. He kind of got his ass kicked all the time.
Well, we had a lot of storied generals throughout history that were kind of that way. And that'd be that could be another podcast series.
I would say, I mean, just real quickly though, I would say he is highly overrated. Patton might be overrated too. But then I would say it was what was it? Nimitz and Halsey were underrated in their naval capabilities and their kind of just instincts were much better and were able to, destroy the Japanese Navy successfully. And then I would say Eisenhower, so underrated, not talked about, but he kept all these crazy egotistical maniac generals of multiple countries in line and got them to accomplish what they needed to accomplish. That guy.
If we could clone Ulysses S. Grant and just make him perpetual sec def, that's ideal. Like, just clone him as each generation of warfare comes up. Just clone a new Ulysses S. Grant, and that is the greatest general in American history. He had his faults as a person, he had his faults as a president, but as a military leader, tactician, and the dude that just like, you want me to go win this motherfucker? Ulysses S. Grant. He had very little moral implications of what he was doing, but he did have just enough to where he's like, we can't wipe them all out. He'd be like, come on, Tecumseh, you can't bring it back 25%. Come on, bring it back, bring it back 25%.
I think it is really interesting. That'd be an interesting talk about overrated people in American history and underrated people.
Yeah.
But
Calvin Coolidge is one of the most underrated presidents of all time. So underrated, he left on his own accord, and people didn't even realize what they were missing.
Well, I think there's a lot of those people, and some people that I used to think were overrated, and then I've come back around on even. But I think, though, my main concern though with the United States and with what Trump's doing is I think we're shoring up we're going to shore up our balance sheet. We're going to shore up, our extraction of resources throughout the United States and secure some additional resources from other places, even if it's Russia. If Ukraine won't give us what Trump calls rare earth, I think we're going to.
That's a great call, because if you pay attention to the news, like right before this blow up in the Oval Office, during those peace conferences in Saudi Arabia, Russia did mention it, like, hey, we got a lot of rare earth minerals too.
I saw on the news today or yesterday Putin talking about, hey, we can supply United States with rare earth. So he said that, I think publicly, just openly to the United States in the last day or two. I just glanced at it, but if that's true, that huge. Is a FU to Europe, to Starmer, Macron, and Zelensky.
And you know what? Fuck them all.
Hey, United States, you're dumping your ex-girlfriend. Hey, look at us. We're pretty good looking. We got a good personality too.
Yeah, and we're Russian.
Yeah,
our women do whatever they want, whatever you want them to.
So I think it's funny. I saw somebody compare it to like breaking up with an ex-girlfriend who is an absolute clinger but crazy. It's like the United States is like, I think that we should end this kind of relationship, but we can still hang out and stuff. And Europe's like, no, you cannot break up with us. Or they're like, oh, screw you, I'm going to go find another man. And then they're like, no, we do need you. And it's like this toxic relationship. And meanwhile, Russia is like the brunette who's stable, who's, like never would cheat on you, everything. They're over here and they're like, hey, we'll cook you. We'll make you a sandwich and cook for you and clean. And we've got these rare earth minerals that you can tap into, and we've got gas and oil, and we can be friends. And I think that Trump's looking at this, and he doesn't, have this historical loyalty to Europe, which has just caused the United States problems. And I think that a lot of Americans maybe are even looking at that and be like, maybe the better route is with Russia now. What does Europe offer us?
Exactly. That's exactly right. They don't offer shit.
So we're going to detangle ourselves, hopefully.
So I'm having a hard time finding a good comparison of the Russian, but for the EU or Europe in general, I just like picture Macron's wife. She's like 65 or some shit like that. Not attractive, and the only Russian woman I can think of is off the top of my head is Anna Kournikova, and that's not a fair comparison, because like she's not your average Russian. This is what I feel like the average relationship with European powers is like Macron's wife, and you're like, maybe she was hot a while ago, I don't know, but she's not doing it for me now.
Maybe she was a dude a while ago.
Could be. I don't know. I just it's just one of those things where it's like when you have a family get together and you're like, these people come always, and they're like, we gotta show them some respect. They're like my grandpa's uncle's kids or something like that. I don't know. And you're just like, they're here, and we have to do all this stuff for them. But I don't know. I don't even know why. And in the meantime, I can't think of like the girl next door Russian type, but that's what I'm picturing Russia as right now.
I mean, I think of Bond girls as Russian, but admittedly, when I was studying abroad, there were some Russian girls, and they just were intriguing somehow. They looked like Bond villains, like not villains, but like Bond girls.
Yeah.
They had like tan trench coats and stuff, and they looked like they could be spies or something, and they were intriguing.
That's funny.
But there was I guess as an American, that's like what you think of is they must be spies or whatever. But
it's funny how much propaganda there was from every angle. You're just like, but we grew up in American propaganda, so this is what.
Yeah, you really realize. I think the thing that I've realized is all these countries, anywhere you go, it doesn't really matter. You got to judge the people for who they are. And, I used to think, oh, the Europeans just so wonderful or whatever. And I really do love them. And a lot of them I've been around over there a fair amount, fortunate to have been over there a fair amount. But so many of them are completely delusional about what America is about and like who we are. And I don't know if it's like just genetically all the outlaws, outliers, and outcasts ended up in the United States somehow, and we just have a tendency to buck the reins more than Europeans, or we just we aren't as controllable or something as a people. I don't know.
It's weird.
But the Europeans, you will tell them, they're so convinced, some of them, and even my friends included, sadly, I mean, I love them to death, but they're so convinced that they understand American politics better than me. And I'm like, you are out of your mind. You're out of your mind. You have no idea about Americans.
That's so weird. So weird.
And I don't know. I don't pretend to understand European politics that much. I mean, I understand like kind of who's more right and who's left, but you know, when it doesn't matter. When I can look at Germany and their energy is like 28 cents a kilowatt and France's is 14 cents a kilowatt because they have nuclear, and then America's is 9 cents a kilowatt, and you're like, we have an advantage over you. We have leverage over you for manufacturing. Why is our manufacturing not better here in the States? And it's because of dumb regulations and, you know, other tariffs and things to shore up to allow Germany to, you know, outproduce and manufacture. But now the times are changing. The energy costs, the green initiatives, and this green energy. And when I was in Germany in 2023, I was with my friend, and he loved to point out all the green energy investments that Germany made. I was like, it doesn't matter, because guess what? Your manufacturing base is declining. So all this green energy initiatives is going to eventually be the downfall of Germany, which is just an economic powerhouse and manufactures amazing things. But it's going to go down, and they don't see it. I've pointed this out to them, and they're like, no, we're the responsible virtue signaling one. And I'm like, virtue signaling will get you nowhere, because the United States is coming back, and we're coming to take all the manufacturing back that we allowed to just disperse from the United States to all these countries. It's coming back. We're taking it back now.
Yeah, America's so back.
It is. We want it back, and Americans want it back.
Yeah, I think so too. We're in this point where we're looking at, like, I mean, yeah, America's pretty awesome. It really is, but I wouldn't say it's great at the moment.
No.
And we're the great power. We should fucking act like it. And yeah, we gotta get some ducks in a row. We got to figure some shit out. But I think the bringing the manufacturing back is going to be huge.
I think the big thing, though, is somehow Americans have been beaten down to thinking that maybe the best times are behind us.
Right.
And I think that is BS, because if the empire is in decline, then we've been a very short-lived empire. And I think we Americans, I think there's much greater potential ahead of us. Possibly, I actually do believe that, just because we haven't unlocked so many resources and we've stifled ourselves. I think if we can unstifle ourselves and unlock these resources and bring back manufacturing and get our government in line and in check, I don't see why we can't enable an opportunity where Americans have real savings and we can save money, and then we can build businesses and invest in things. And I mean, when I say invest in things, I don't mean invest in like Snapchat or TikTok or whatever stupid thing that Silicon Valley tech companies come out with that's like some stupid social media thing. I mean, like investing in turning raw goods into something useful and producing food, homes, equipment, things that matter. Clothing. It'd be nice if we could produce some clothing.
Yeah, for sure.
Some shoes, more shoes. I'm seeing more and more like boots that you can buy that are made in America or mostly made in America.
Yeah, like you're seeing some, you know, and
it's expensive, but
it was so back in this had been I forget exactly the term they used, but it was like the Mormon Reformation. That's what it was called, the Reformation. And this was like during the Utah War, during the Mountain Meadows Massacre. If you watched that show, American Primeval, good show. Horrible on their historical accuracy, but I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't researched the Mormons already. So that being said, so Brigham Young made this proclamation because all the women were getting real uppity about the polygamy. They're having their issues, and they were complaining to the elders and whatnot. And Brigham Young was like, I'm tired of all you bitches whining. If you want out so bad, you can leave. You have this period of time, and you can leave. But you're leaving with the clothes on your back, and that's it, because everything that you have here belongs to the Mormon Church, because this is a Mormon Church project. And I think Donald Trump needs to do the same thing. Like, hey, are you an American? You know, like essentially Brigham Young's like, are you Mormon? Is you a Mormon? Is you not? Because if you is, you're staying, and this is how it is. If not, get the fuck out, and best of luck to you. I like, we're a democracy, right? You know, I always talk about our democracy. Well, the American people voted, and we put this guy in, and we gave him the House and the Congress and the Senate as well. So let the man cook. See what happens.
Yeah, I would say, I think I never did get to the point, but I do have a fear that we are going to have to suffer through some short-term pain.
Oh, probably so.
And I think that and that would be higher prices. That pain will come from higher prices via tariffs, energy, things like that. I think that's why Trump is trying to open up the energy spigots, is he knows if he can keep energy prices minimal, then that'll offset some of
that offsets so much
price
else.
Inflation. Yeah.
So much else.
I mean, oil is still king in this world. And
because it's, you know, at the very heart of it, you know, it's like heating your house and running your appliances and stuff like that. That's the base of it. But also transportation, like everything gets put on a truck. And if you can be running $100 or $1.50 diesel, that makes everything so much fucking cheaper. That makes your feed prices cheaper, because it's cheaper to get the corn to wherever you're feeding it to. It makes beef prices cheaper because just think as a cattle producer, you know, when you're shipping from summer range to winter range, and when you're shipping cattle to market, whatever, if that cuts your fuel bill in half, come on.
Hay, feed.
Yeah. All of that shit. That.
And so I think Trump knows that, and he's going to try to use energy prices to combat inflation.
That's good. That's a good place to start.
And boy, if you could have Russia import, because my understanding is, and I don't understand a lot about oil markets, but what we pump out of the U.S. is not good. Well, we have to mix it with a heavier, sludgier oil to make diesel, because our oil we pump out here is better for like gasoline, and it's not good for diesel production. So
but like Russia and Venezuela produce
we need that heavier,
heavy
stuff,
but it takes more to refine it.
It does. And so it's something, and I don't really know it, but it seems like if I was, Donald J. Trump, keeping energy prices low obviously makes sense. We've got to find a way to keep bringing that in. And OPEC didn't want to increase their production. They said that was a no-go. So you can either really try to sweet talk the Saudis. I don't know if that would be a go, but Russia's the answer, is to go get, if we import stuff. Can we build a freaking pipeline? I don't even know. But and
that's the thing, because always after a war, you ramp up your economy to support the war effort. That's how it always goes. And then, like, our biggest times of like domestic turmoil have come after a war, because you have returning soldiers, and then you have all this production that gets shut down almost to nothing. And so Russia's on a war, like a full war footing right now. That war is about to come to an end. Their economy is hanging on because of the war economy. If they've got an outlet for something as they come out of combat and a full like war mobilization, that makes them a stabler country. And like Ukraine, like there's no talk about what the fuck's going to happen with Ukraine once that comes down. Like once that comes to an end, because eventually it will. And whether Zelensky's the head of it or not, TBD. But my money's slightly on no.
My money is I think my money is that he's not going to last. I'd be surprised if he's president in a year.
So this is a thing where guys like me and you, we can, but like we're nerds enough to where we've read into it. But your average person doesn't, and I realize that. Like I read way into stuff that most people don't. But when that coup happened in 2014 and it overthrew the government that was leaning more towards Russia, well, that was helped tremendously, particularly with boots on the ground, by ultra-nationalist, right-wing, neo-Nazi types. Maybe not specifically all the groups were neo-Nazi, but all of them were very much ultra-Ukrainian nationalists. And not just like America First type people, but no, like fuck Poland, fuck Russia, fuck Finland, fuck Estonia. Like they're like, no, we're Ukrainian. This is our, and that was like the brute force that helped them secure power. That being said, a large segment of that subset, or a large subsegment of that segment, is very much of the old school Nazi bent. They're neo-Nazis. I don't think they have a whole lot of problem ousting a Jew from power.
Yeah. I suspect a lot of them are dead too.
A lot of them probably are.
I don't think there's much left of the Azov battalion, right? And those
but that's a weird thing about ideologies, as we found out through history, is they don't die so easy. And
no, it's not. It's true, but I could see the parliament or like a coup taking place essentially with.
Yeah.
I mean, they're in such turmoil. Ukraine is in such dire straits that, and I heard too.
Well, I heard they were a united front, though.
Wow. I heard too that while Zelensky was literally doing the press conference, Russia was able to take 2 more towns or villages to advance farther eastward. So I mean, when you're kidnapping kids essentially off the street to fight your war, to throw them to the meat grinder, I think you're running on fumes.
Yeah, the thing is, they always say like the first casualty in war is the truth, and when we finally start to find out like what's really been going on there, and I think Trump's been hinting at it pretty heavily.
He's saying like 700,000 people dead, right?
Yeah, but he's not doing a really good. Like he's putting the numbers out there, but he's not doing. Like he could do a better job of articulating, and that's also kind of one of the downfalls of Trump. He's good at some things and not that. But like if you could put like a Scott Horton, give him the actual numbers and let him put out a report of what the fuck is actually going on out there, the American public would not support it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other problem, and just speaking of Scott Horton, is, he was saying like, Trump doesn't have anything he can negotiate with Russia. He's going to have to give Russia everything they ask for. I'm like, I don't think that's true.
No, either. I don't think so either.
And so when he was saying that, I think he was on maybe the Tom Woods podcast or something. I was like, Scott, and I like Scott Horton. I think he's really good on like historical things of what happened.
He's excellent on just laying out a case
But
or laying out a story.
it's the problem with so many people. They either have defeatism of the United States, and I feel like that's why I'm not really a libertarian so much anymore. I agree in theory and with a lot of things, but it doesn't really work in practicality because there's always this
Yeah.
power vacuum that people are going to try to take over. And I think the interesting thing is, I think we do have cards
I think we got
with
a lot of
Russia to
cards.
play, because I think Russia wants to make some trade. And I think the United States does too. And I think to believe that Trump cares about who gets what land in Ukraine, I don't think that's a big deal. I think Trump would rather be known as the guy who brought peace, and he could hang his hat on it and boast about it and everything, and then just bring trade to Russia and put that all behind him. I don't think he's like worried about trying to save face or something, because as far as he looks at it, it's like an inherited mess that he's going to solve. Same
Yep.
thing with
He wants
Gaza,
to be
Israel. Same
peacemaker.
thing with
He's been talking about
Afghanistan.
himself as peacemaker for a while. He's projecting it out there, and you know what? I'm
Shocked.
I'm skeptical, but like, come on, let's go.
Yeah.
Show me. Like, if he is like, he's already been the greatest president in my lifetime, and he's been mostly a failure. If we're being 100% honest, he's been mostly a failure. But that just goes to show you how bad everybody else has been, and that includes Reagan.
Reagan was not good.
He was not great. George W. Bush, Biden. If he would have had another 4 years, he would have overtaken George W. as the worst president in my lifetime. But it can't be overstated how bad George W. Bush was. Like, he sucked so hard.
And I have to say, was he even president? It was Cheney. I mean,
it was Cheney.
I know
It was Cheney.
Bush deserves the blame. He was the guy people voted for, but man, what he put into motion has damn near destroyed the United States.
So this kind of is one of our final points here. This point in particular, like the internal dissension, like we're gonna have to take that into account when we go on our empire conquests, because if we go in with the mindset like we did in Iraq, that they're gonna greet us as liberators, well, we're gonna find out 20 years later that there's still that nobody that really likes us, and not everybody hates us, but nobody really likes us. And we're kind of, at best case scenario, we're on par with where we started.
Well, I would say if we shore up everything here at home, and we clean up our internal government, Doge, and pass things in Congress to make this durable, to where we aren't, and Americans are like, oh wow, this is working, and it grows. My idea of imperialism is a little bit different than what we've tried before. If we're going to go on this hypothetical conquest, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is we come in, we pull the trick where we kind of come in as peacekeepers. Like, for example, right now, I would go in and try to, because Rwanda is, they like to tout themselves as, we're the up and comers in Africa, but they're funding the M23 gangs, or gang, that is raiding the Western Congo, or the Northeast, I think it's Northwest Congo area, which with all the natural resources and killing people, and that stuff is just really bad. So I would come in, United States, we're not part of the UN. We might cut off all funding, but we'll stay present so we know what those sneaky bastards are up to. But we will come in, peacekeep. So either, basically protect the mines and the resources, put in some roads so the Congolese can actually transport goods. They give us a sweetheart deal, basically for security around their natural resources.
Mm-hmm.
But we talk to Rwanda too, and we're like, hey, listen, we'll give you a cut of the profits, but we're going to stay here peacekeeping. And, we just happen to set up military bases right by the uranium cake mines, by the gold mines, things like that.
Strategery.
Yeah. And we come in and we don't meddle too much with the economy, but the Congolese that work for us, or the Rwandans that work for us, we pay good money. We pay them fair, pay them well. But the problem is ISIS and crap like that is penetrating that part of Africa now. So we're running up against the radical Islam again.
Mm.
So that's what's kind of going on with M23. They're using that as a recruitment tool. But right now, the UN that's there is currently just selling guns to the gangs. They're guns that they get issued. It's like people from India and stuff. According to Eric Prince, right? They're selling their weaponry to the people who are invading Congo. So I think we kick the UN out and then we take some resources, and that would be an example of how I would try to do imperialism, like soft imperialism.
I like that. I want to do like a super slow, like death by 1,000 cuts type of imperialism towards the British Isles.
Mm.
And I think we start by funding the IRA. And then we let Ireland do some governing for once. They've proved to be ungovernable throughout history, so let's let them try to govern the British Isles. And like we cut a deal with them, like we'll just let you do your thing, and you let us use the Channel, the North Sea, all that good stuff, and we'll keep importing butter. You keep doing your thing, and we'll just see how it goes. And if you get out of hand, then we can step in. But let's see how that blood feud turns out.
I think I would be very curious because I don't know I don't even know what would happen with the UK right now. I don't really have a good feel of. It seems like a lot of the people are sick and tired of the UK government currently, but it doesn't seem like they're getting anywhere. So.
Can we fund the next Irish Hitler, or the first Irish Hitler?
Oh my goodness, we probably would end up doing that. I don't know who that'd be, although it probably would be someone from the Middle East with the way Ireland's demographic
right
looks. It would probably be another person from like refugee.
He's wearing a keffiyeh, but he's got a Hitler mustache.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's a lot of problems with that in Ireland right now. So
yeah. It's so see, this is another, so like I was saying, this is another aspect that we gotta throw into the whole mixer when we're talking imperialism, because we want to do it right. We have the ultimate advantage of being the world hegemon with all of the world's, well, except for Pam Bondi, if you'd released a few files, we'd have a little bit closer to all of the world's knowledge at the tip of our fingers. So we have the advantage of knowing why empires failed and where they went wrong, and now we have the opportunity to do it right. And I think my tagline on this one is going to be "Daylight always burns in the American Empire."
That's right.
Yeah. So. Anyways, it's gonna be a fun series. We'll come back for the next episode, which will be reversion to the Monroe Doctrine, and I'll try to get everybody together, and we'll come at it from a yeah. We'll bring economics. We'll bring socioeconomics. We'll bring geopolitics,
diplomacy,
all of it, military strategy, natural resources, all of it. It's going to be fun. But Dan, great to see you again. And thanks everybody for tuning in. This has been Burnin Daylight Conquers the World. Now move your ass. We're burning daylight.
Your eyes up in the morning beneath the stars so bright. Pull your hat down, make sure your cinch is tight. Horses kinda snuffy, cold chill up your spine. We'll get your ass moving, son, we're burning daylight. Burning daylight. Burning daylight. In the saddle till the job's done right. Just together, and you won't catch 'em all. But when you ride through the gate, make sure you sit up tall. I can see the horizon, it's looking pretty bright. Well, get your ass moving, son, we're burning daylight. Burning daylight. Burning daylight. In the saddle till the job's done right. Burning daylight. Burning